Okay, we'll call this meeting of the Eureka City Council to order. We'll need a roll call in a minute here. Roll call.
Mayor Yeager.
Here.
Councilmember Brady.
Here.
Councilmember Atkins.
Here.
Councilmember Burgell.
Here.
Councilmember Cherubellini.
Here.
Councilmember Arroyo.
Here.
Okay. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I have some announcements that we'll let everybody know about before we start the meeting tonight. First thing is item 15 on the agenda, which is the discussion of a transportation action plan, has been pulled for consideration at a later meeting. The other thing is on item 14, which is the open space property maintenance plan. If you during public comment on that, if you'd like to speak at public comment, we have a card system here. Please write your name on the card and you'll be called up 3 people at a time for public comment on that item. Other than that, we have some proclamations tonight, and we'll start with Marion with a proclamation regarding Great American Smokeout.
Thank you, Mayor. So this proclamation is in recognition of the Great American Smokeout. Whereas the American Cancer Society encourages all tobacco users to join the Great American Smokeout and quit nicotine for at least one day, and whereas tobacco use remains the leading preventable cause of death in the United States, and whereas electronic cigarettes are a relatively new way to introduce nicotine into the human body by means of an aerosol that contains unregulated levels of nicotine and other chemicals, and whereas e-cigarette cartridges come in fruit and candy flavors such as chocolate, gummy bear, and bubble gum that appeal to youth, have tricked a new generation into nicotine addiction. And whereas numerous scientific studies cited by the World Health Organization have found toxic and cancer-causing chemicals in e-cigarettes, to which both the user and bystanders are exposed. And whereas the U.S. Centers for Disease Control has documented a major increase in e-cigarette use among children, including children who have never smoked a regular cigarette, and whereas many nations, states, and more than 131 local jurisdictions in California, including Eureka, Arcata, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, now prohibit e-cigarettes wherever smoking is prohibited, and whereas there are many proven resources, many of them free, to help nicotine users quit, now therefore I, Mayor Marion Brady, on behalf of Mayor Frank Yeager and the rest of the City Council, do hereby proclaim January 21st, wrong. We have a typo. I guess if the gentleman from the Cancer Society from the anti-smoking, could you clarify what the date is
Thank
of
you.
this?
This year's Great American Smokeout is November 19th, the third Thursday in November.
November 19th.
And I'm sorry, that could have been my mistake. So,
That's okay. Anyway, so congratulations on another upcoming smokeout. And if you would like to give tell us your name.
thank you. My name is Jay McCubry. I'm a volunteer tonight with the American Cancer Society. And thank you. This is a beautiful piece, if I do say so myself, and I thank you so much for your support. We know that we know how to help smokers quit, and unfortunately, e-cigarettes are not one of them. I just participated in the Centers for Disease Control Grand Rounds today, which highlights cutting edge and important public health issues that are of national significance. And some of the indicators are that, yes, the research shows that current smokers might cut down on regular tobacco, but in fact often become dual users where they actually end up using more nicotine because they can use, or they think they can use, not so in Eureka and other major cities in California, use e-cigarettes in places where they can smoke. So the bottom line of the conference today was that ask not what e-cigarettes can do for smokers, ask what they can do to our children. And in fact, one of the things that is most appealing to young people are the fruit and candy and bubble gum and pizza and dessert flavors that e-cigarettes now come in, also containing addictive nicotine. For probably 10 years now, the 4 major global tobacco corporations have owned e-cigarette companies, and they're buying up more and more. The e-cigarettes are rapidly increasing in use among teenagers. And although I can look at the data and see that, oh wow, that's alarming on a national level, it really hits home when a high school senior says, oh yeah, when you go to parties, you can see them everywhere because you can do smoke tricks. I mean, how teenage is that, right? They have no idea what they're getting themselves into. We know how to help people quit, and there are many free resources available online and here locally by calling your American Cancer Society or the California Smokers Helpline at 1-800-NO-BUTS. And I thank you once again for supporting our efforts to end a world of nicotine addiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And we will get you an updated proclamation for you to display. Sorry about
fine,
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and we have the Humboldt County Library. Do you have somebody representing the library tonight? Please step on up. 20 years. Doesn't seem like that long.
Victor Sisweta, I'm the Humboldt County Library Director.
Go ahead.
Okay, a proclamation from the City of Eureka, Eureka, Maine Library 20th Anniversary. Whereas the Humboldt County Library Construction Advisory Committee worked persistently for 22 years from concept to completion to build the combined Humboldt County Library headquarters and the Eureka, Maine Library at 1313 3rd Street. And whereas the Eureka, Maine Library had its grand opening in November 4th, 1995, and represents the collective efforts of hundreds of volunteers and thousands of contributors who worked against many obstacles to realize the construction of the 64,000 square foot public library to benefit all the citizens of Humboldt County. And whereas during the month of November 2015, the people of Humboldt County will celebrate the 20th anniversary of the opening of the Eureka, Maine Library. And in recognition of this historic occasion, the community is deserving of a special proclamation from the Eureka City Council. And whereas, historically, in 1859, the Eureka Library Association established a public library in Eureka. And in 1915, the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors established the Humboldt County Free Library to serve county residents, which was housed in various locations, and in 1960 was moved temporarily to the Humboldt County Courthouse. And whereas, in 1972, the City of Eureka Public Library and the Humboldt County Library combined their institutions. And whereas, in 1973, a Library Construction Advisory Committee was appointed to plan for a new combined Humboldt County Library headquarters and Eureka Public Library structure, for which architectural planning began and a major fundraising campaign launched in 1985. And whereas, in September 1993, groundbreaking ceremonies were held for the Eureka, Maine Library at its current location. And whereas, that is with great pride and pleasure in commending the hard work and public spirit demonstrated by everyone involved in the planning, development, and completion of the new Maine Public Library, and hereby urge the public to participate in the 20th anniversary celebration and ceremonies at the Eureka, Maine Library.
Just want to say that we are planning the month of November to have a series of events to commemorate the opening of the main library. We have invited the state librarian to come and participate on November 2nd. We also invited the former California State Librarian Susan Hildreth, who was a former director of the Institute of Museum and Library Services, a federal agency that provides funding to public libraries. And she now participates in a forum sponsored by the Aspen Institute looking at the future of public libraries. So Susan Hildreth will be talking about the future of public libraries and the changes that she sees coming. We have other events, and we'll be doing a display showing the construction of the Eureka Main Library, and we just want to invite the public to come and participate. So I want to thank the City Council for this proclamation, and if there are any questions.
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
And do we have someone present that represents the domestic violence project? You step forward. And Natalie, Councilperson Natalie is going to read that proclamation.
This is a proclamation in recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2015. Whereas domestic violence remains a serious national, state, and community social issue and is not confined to any group of people, domestic violence crosses economic, ethnic, sexual preference, and age categories. And whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's dignity, security, and humanity with the systematic use of power and control through physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic abuse, and its victims can face serious life-threatening injuries, mental problems, emotional problems, and death. And whereas children who witness domestic violence are at greater risk for lifelong behavior problems, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, health problems, and they have a greater risk of becoming abusers and victims in their adult intimate relationships. And whereas in 1977, Humboldt Domestic Violence Services was founded by a small group of concerned women who provided life-saving emergency services to battered women and their children, and became actively involved in prevention measures and public policies of the domestic violence movement in their community, state, and nation. And whereas Humboldt Domestic Violence Services staffs a 24/7 crisis and support line that specializes in direct client and survivor services and has sheltered over 1,000 survivors and their children in the past year in either emergency or short-term sheltering. And whereas Humboldt Domestic Violence Services continues an ongoing collaboration with community and county agencies, local tribes, the Latino community, Humboldt State University, and law enforcement with Humboldt Domestic Violence Services, public education, as well as enlisting men and the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and queer community as allies to change the environment and mindset that has historically allowed acts of domestic violence to be accepted. Now, therefore, I, Councilmember Natalie Arroyo, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, proclaim the month of October 2015 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and reaffirm our support and commitment to Humboldt Domestic Violence Services for their 38 years of dedication to working to improve community safety through multifaceted approaches.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. On behalf of Humboldt Domestic Violence Services, its survivors, children, staff, and board members, I'd like to thank you for remembering HDVS during October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, with proclamation. Domestic violence is more than a woman's issue. It's a community issue that brings with it challenges that affect everyone in our community and beyond. Humboldt Domestic Violence Services is an ongoing strength-based program for women, men, and children of domestic violence and intimate partner violence. We have a 24/7 confidential crisis and support line that supports all of Humboldt County. Our mission is to break the cycle of intimate partner violence through service, education, and advocacy. We also have an active Spanish-speaking program, as well as, and our advocates as our advocate assists our communities. HDVS can be reached by calling locally at 443-6042 or toll free at 866-668-6543 any time of day or night, or by emailing us directly at dvservices hdvs.org. We also have a Facebook page and a Twitter page where you can like us and get ongoing updates, and a new website that will premiere in late October. In addition, we help with court accompaniment, peer counseling, support groups, emergency and short-term shelter, restraining order assistance, and community resources and referrals. We hope you will look for us through the rest of the month of October and joining us in helping to make our community more aware of domestic violence and sharing our vision and eliminating it from our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to council reports, and I imagine there are a few reports, everybody having recently been to the League of California Cities meeting. So, Marion, we'll start with you.
I guess we're going to go down the row. At the beginning of the month, all of us attended the League of California Cities annual conference, which is a 3-day event with lots of dynamic speakers and lots of classes that you could sign on. Usually it's a conflict about what you go to attend because there's so many things happening at the same time. They definitely overbook a little. But and at this meeting, because I was the president of the Redwood Empire Division, that was the meeting at which it's turned over to the next president. And so that next president is Martin Scheel from Lakeport. So he'll be taking over the duties of the Redwood Empire Division presidency in the future. And basically when I come back from the meeting, usually I meet with the city manager and I have my little book all marked up and report things that I think are really interesting or that I would like him to follow up on or give him contacts. Also during the meetings, there's also a trade show, tech expo type thing, and during that time, I often find information that I think might be really pertinent that we could use in the city. That would be that's something that maybe because the city manager was at another conference, he couldn't partake of. So I report back on that, and I won't bore you with all the details, but it's very pack-filled, very worthwhile trip. Thank you.
Linda?
I just wanted to pick out a couple of things that workshops that I went to at the League of Cities Convention, and one that I thought would be really, really good for the city of Eureka is the state of California is proposing establishing cultural districts, and this is something that Councilmember Brady has talked about on and on about an arts district on F Street, probably in Eureka. Well, the California Arts Council is going to be in charge of developing the cultural districts throughout the state of California. And what will happen is the Arts Council will create a map of the state of California and the different cultural districts in the different cities throughout the state so that people can be drawn to our area to look at our arts district. And I think it'd be great if we kind of get on the cutting edge of this because all of the details aren't worked out yet. And if our probably Main Street and Councilmember Brady were working ahead of time to get us on the map with the Arts Council, I think it would probably be a really good thing. They said that the California Arts Council is very interested in rural communities, so because I asked them, okay, are we competing against San Francisco and Los Angeles because it is a competitive process, and they said no, that there will be rural communities especially singled out to be on the map. So I thought that was really exciting and something that we could do in a fairly straightforward way. The rest of my convention was more geeky, I guess. Municipal finance, I went to 3 different municipal finance workshops. One that was really good was for municipal finance for non-financial people, which helped me understand the other two quite a bit better. But there was also one about economic development project funding, which is something, since we don't have redevelopment anymore, we need to look into other ways, and I'll be sharing those also with the city manager and staff as time goes on.
Thanks, Linda.
Oh, and great karaoke night. We have some great staff and council karaoke singers.
Kim? Yep.
And an anniversary. So this was my first conference, and it was pretty overwhelming. There was a lot of information. The things that I enjoyed, I think, most were talking to different people from different communities and seeing what they do. And I did go to several different meetings, and the ones that I found really interesting, one was about restorative justice, which is something that we kind of have some part in doing here, but it allows people that commit crimes to actually go to the person that they committed the crime to. And it's just a way to help people make amends and live differently. It's not so punitive. And then the expo was fascinating to me. I found a lot of things there and brought back a couple of things that may work out to increase our revenue for the city, is my hope. So, yeah, it was a great time and very informative.
Thanks. Linda?
Well, this was the first conference I've ever missed, unfortunately, and sounds like it was a good one. But I was busy watching my son being sworn in as an attorney up in the state of Washington. So had to do that instead of go to the conference. So I could brag about that anyway.
Natalie?
Well, I also went to the League of Cities conference, and I found many of the sessions really helpful, but one of the things that was the most helpful for me was talking to the League's legislative staff and a number of other council members from other communities about how they're dealing with specific issues that we also face, and also how some of the governor's most recently passed bills are going to affect Eureka and communities throughout the state. So I spent a lot of time getting caught up in those conversations and taking plentiful notes. So that was where I got the most bang for my buck. And I also really enjoyed the opportunity to spend more time with our staff. So it was really good.
Okay, any other council reports? Okay. We'll move to public comment period. And this is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Pursuant to City Council Resolution number 2011-22, City Council policy is to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. The public will be allowed to speak concurrently with the calling of an agenda item following the staff presentation of that item. And pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council cannot take action on any item that does not appear on the agenda. And I would remind everybody this is for comment on items that do not appear on the agenda. So is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the council at this time?
I'd actually like to address the folks watching at home. If you are listening to me live, you still have time to come down and let your voice be heard. They are planning to do a despicable thing later this evening. They are planning to criminalize poverty. And
James, as that does not appear on the agendas, please sit down. James, the mic is off. You're talking about item 14. Please sit down. Thank you.
I didn't start yet. It started over. I just got up here and it's already ticking. Come
Kim,
on, you
go
guys.
ahead.
It's already 10 seconds and I haven't.
You're wasting your time. Go ahead.
Are you kidding me? I got up here and it was ticking away. You all are okay with that? I just got up here and it was ticking. Why don't you just start it over? This wasn't the...
Are you going to speak or not?
Yeah, but I have 3 minutes and now it's 2:30.
Now you've just wasted all that time.
You are an asshole. There is no affordable housing. There are no legal free places for people to sleep here. The people need a moratorium on the enforcement, ticketing, arresting, jailing, and prosecuting of anti-camping and anti-survival ordinances in Eureka. The city does not have affordable housing for its many residents without a place to live. The city violates human and civil rights of homeless people every day and night with its anti-sitting, anti-lying, anti-sleeping, and nuisance laws. The city violates human and civil rights with no public bathrooms. The city violates civil rights by relying on a religious, bigoted, evangelistic, anti-gay Eureka rescue mission as its excuse for homeless housing. The city violates civil and human rights by sicking its violent, unaccountable, poor people targeting cops on defenseless, shelterless people who have every right to be here and move around freely as anyone else does. There is no affordable housing here in Eureka. HUD apartments built over 40 years ago do not count. We need affordable housing. We need car sleeping amnesty wherein people can sleep in their cars. We need a moratorium on enforcing anti-camping laws. We need a moratorium on anti-sleeping laws, a moratorium on enforcing anti-sitting laws. This city can pretend it is doing something for homeless and poor people, residents, but it is a lie. Until there are places for homeless residents to be, it is critical there be a moratorium on the enforcement of the anti-sleeping and sitting laws. No more theft of houseless people's belongings by the police. No more jailing someone for sleeping, like Dane Carr, who's doing a 140-day sentence for 9 tickets for sleeping at night. No tent, nothing. Sleeping, getting up in the morning. 140-day sentence. Moratorium now. Human rights now. Dignity for all people. Housing is a human right. Sleep is a human right. Moratorium now on anti-sleeping, anti-lying down, anti-sitting laws. Moratorium on your horrible nuisance law that hurts victims of domestic violence, which you all heard right before you passed it. Unlock the public bathrooms and make them ADA compliant. Meanwhile, put up porta potties. Moratorium now.
Thank you, Kim. Let me announce right now, if the clapping continues, we're going to clear the council chambers. So I appreciate it if you wouldn't make me do that. Okay, go ahead.
I don't want to waste anyone's time. I need a place I can call mine. This stressful way of life has got me down. The ones in power don't want me around their town. I'm just out of sight and out of mind. You are voted, now you've made sleeping a crime. Where will I go? What will I do? So I see you asking for my spare change. Unlike you, I work hard for my own pay. You should be put in jail for the things you do. I want my children not to grow up to be like you. Keep out of sight and stay out of my mind. You're a nuisance here, you're something I despise. I don't care where you must go, what you must do. Jail is not the alternative for houselessness. And this nuisance law is bogus. And what you're about to put on the agenda, making people sign cards to speak their mind, I hope everyone hangs out and says what needs to be said.
Thank you. Another person?
Hello, my name is Bob Bartley, and I have a few things I'd like to say to the council and to everyone here. I have a concern with a political organization called True North, which has infiltrated our North Coast. They're activists who use aggressive tactics to intimidate others who have different political beliefs than their own. They say their goal is to represent the unrepresented, but they don't seem to care if the unrepresented are breaking the law. Unfortunately, they are being sponsored by Humboldt Area Foundation, which is supposed to be a non-political and an organization which used to be respected by all. Humboldt Area Foundation used to be known for community development and educational scholarships. I think the executive director is making a big mistake to associate HAF with these organized political protesters. And as an example, just to give you an example of how the Humboldt Area Foundation spends their money, which I think everyone wants to know if you're giving money to an organization that's supposed to help people, their compensation report that came from the Foundation Center, the median operating expenses for the community organizations come in at a whopping 7%. Basically, Humboldt Area Foundation needs almost 500% more money to run its operation than most other charitable organizations. The extra 500% goes to paying both employee salaries and to funding the Community Strategies program, which we discussed in previous editions of the North Coast, whatever it is. The Humboldt Area Foundations, as an example, if you look at a chart, which unfortunately I don't have one big enough to show you, on the chart of other organizations that give money away, they have average of 3 employees per organization, and their cost is considerably lower. So I just wanted to put that out as a thought when you're deciding where to give your charitable money. However, on the good side, Humboldt County's True North is part of the larger True North Fund, the Edna McConnell Clark Foundation, which offers many grant funds. They appear to have over 30 wealthy donors, including George Soros. The foundation has aggregate assets from 2014 of $1,017 million with an annual revenue of $112 million. Since True North has a connection to this larger, well-funded organization which is devoted to helping people, we suggest that our True North, focus their efforts towards redirecting funds from the Edna McConnell Clark Foundation to Humboldt County and fund housing for our homeless. Since they have the funds and the city of Eureka does not, they could take full credit for housing our homeless.
Bob,
Problem solved. We'd send a big thank you to True North.
Thank you. Is there anyone else like to address the council at this time? For an item that's not on the agenda.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda. So I was looking at the agenda, and an item is missing, and if I'm wrong, forgive me, but some kind of public update on what's going on with Focus Strategies would be really nice. Technically, we should have been here to discuss Focus Strategies. So I'm assuming that our city manager knows what's going on with it, and I would hope that sometime tonight you guys will be willing to let us know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi. First of all, this is the first city council meeting where I've had to put my name in a basket to speak on an item that's on the agenda later on this evening. What are you guys, the NSA, like the federal government spying on people's Facebook pages? Get real. This is a city council meeting that's open to the public. You forget who pays your salaries? The public does. And that includes my husband's taxpayer dollars. Okay? Second, and I'm making this very clear, if you're going to have an animal control officer working for your police department, he better damn well know, and excuse my French on that, because he's about this close to getting you guys sued for violating the federal ADA on service dogs. He better damn well read up on the federal ADA on what he can and cannot ask a service dog owner. He's the animal control officer. He should know that as part of his job as animal control. You can ask a service dog owner one of two questions: if it's a service dog, and what service the dog is trained to perform. You cannot ask for any paperwork, because that's like going into my doctor's office or me going into your doctor's office and asking. That paperwork has my private medical information on it. How would you like it if I walked into your doctor's office and asked for your medical information, Mayor Yeager? Or City Councilwoman Chamberlain? Or if I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm not sure if I am or not, and if I'm not, I'm sorry. But there's a reason they can only ask those two questions. It's because the paperwork that comes with the service dogs has my medical information that's protected under federal HIPAA laws. Your animal control officer or any other officer asks me any one of those two questions, I feel like my hand will be forced into suing the city. And don't put it past me, because you know I'll do it. Mayor Yeager.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the council at this time?
Sue Brandenburg, Eureka. I was vandalized again this last month. They came in and they took all the chain work I had around the property to keep people from cutting across my property. I had to have the poles sawed off. The brick that cost me $1,000 to put on that corner has been destroyed from people. Over last year, the apartment next to mine, which I own, they tried to physically break in. I'm a methamphetamine user. So now I put in $1,500 worth of security. Over at the fourplex that I own, we've had to put in garage doors and close the carports, put in fences, change the locks on the washing rooms because they've been broken into. I am sick of this. I am sick of this mamby-pamby, let's feed every piece of shit that comes into this town. Today and last night, I called arms dealers, trainers, and I'm going to start a senior arms club, guns, and if you want to come back, we'll take care of you. Obviously, you can't take care of this city. And so, to date, over the last 10 years, I have put over $8,000 in those buildings to keep them safe and repair the vandalism that's done to them. I can't believe how poorly this area is run. Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the council now?
Ready? Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Jeannie Breslin, Eureka resident. Last meeting, I was remiss and I failed to thank EPD and Chief Andrew Mills, and especially Susie Owsley, who does so much and is a liaison between EPD and our community. For nominating us and us being the recipient of the Attorney General Award. It was a 2-month process and a 20-page application. And so I know Chief's not here today, but I'm sure the captains will relay our gratitude from all 4 of us. To the council, I respectfully say to you, I'd like to remind you that you came into our neighborhoods. You knocked on our doors. You promised us that you had the right stuff, leadership qualities needed to represent us, courage to make the hard decisions to protect Eureka and keep our city safe. In turn, we gave you our trust and vote. Fear has paralyzed this council to some degree, and I would say to you, enough is enough, and we need action now. This is where we hold you accountable for those campaign promises. Now is the time to demonstrate those leadership skills. Keep those promises you made to us, the citizens of Eureka. Now is the time for you to earn our trust and respect by representing us and not a bunch of illegal campers. EPD's last count of 112 illegal campers came up with 99 of those illegal campers with criminal backgrounds. The rest couldn't even come up with IDs, which leads me to believe that they have some sort of criminal background in which they're trying to hide their identity. The crime and blight is destroying Eureka and eroding every aspect of our life. Loss of tax revenue, safety, loss of opportunity for our youth to remain in Eureka, tourism, quality of life. We cannot even enjoy our parks and public lands in safety. Inability to recruit professionals to Eureka. My doctors and medical friends tell me we're in a medical crisis. My doctor saw me the other day and says, Jeannie Breslin, thank you what you're doing for the community, yada, yada, and then goes on to tell me how he tries to recruit another surgeon to our community at the only 5-star restaurant we have, when a lady of the evening comes by, lifts up her tops, and smashes her breasts into the pane windows. Well, there went that surgeon. That surgeon certainly isn't going to.
All right, thank you, Jeannie.
The agenda item number 14. Mr. Decker was just informing people that it was about homeless issue, and if you read the agenda, there was no clue that it was about the homeless issue, and he came up to notify people that it was about that. In terms of the speaker cards, you can't. I filled mine out Brown Act. The open meeting laws say that people can come and talk to you. They can say anything. They can cuss at you. It's very hard. It's very difficult. But the open meeting laws, that's the business you're in. It's a hard thing to do, but that's what the open meeting laws say. So I would ask that you, at the end of those that want to identify themselves, if you could then ask other people to come up, that would be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the council at this time on an item not on the agenda?
The last time I was here, I was talking about the the fact that some years ago, the business as usual attitude that has permeated from the Robin Arkley, very wealthy, and the less wealthy people who seem to be blinkered by their own fear that some justice will occur for the poor people in this town. I was here because Martin Cotton, a homeless person, had been beat to death by the Eureka police. And a civil case took place in San Francisco, and they found the officers guilty. And a $4.3 million award was given to the Cotton family. The response, I'm repeating what I said then, but it's worthwhile, I believe, to bring it up. The response by the police chief, acting police chief Merle Harpham, was to the lawyer for the family saying, we think that they need to change things up here. He said, we're not going to change anything. And that's what's been going on for decades up here, is a class of people with wealth has been buying into the notion that poor people come from Mars and we need to just move them out. But poor people come from the great disparity that has been recognized by the Pope, by the President, that when people get rich people get rich because poor people get poor. There's a cause and effect relationship. And as long as people are blinded to that fact and think that poor people are somehow, they're not the dung of the devil. That's what the Pope said excessive capitalism was. And when you have capitalism that fails to provide low-cost housing for people, that instead encourages police to go out and kill and beat people, not even homeless people. There's many a death has taken place in this town that was for no reason at all. And I think that the people of Eureka need to realize that this is not working. People are not going away. And the attitude that says just bring on more police force, don't be scared, go out and roust and beat and harass the poor people, that is come and gone. You know, we are in a crisis situation, and we need to resolve it with compassion. And the people who have money in their bank accounts, live in their homes, and don't care for the other people, they are the dung of the devil.
Thank you.
I'm Kathy Anderson, and I thought that I would inform the people of the city of Eureka about Focus Strategies. Focus Strategies happens to come out of Sacramento, and the woman that founded it is a member of the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness federal program. She's also a part of the local governments for sustainability, of which Eureka is a member. Eureka and the County of Humboldt is a member of ICLEI, which is an acronym for International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, which is a part of Agenda 21 of the United Nations. I just thought that everybody would like to know that.
Wow. I did sign up for whenever 14 comes around, but I just couldn't sit there having this be my hometown, having volunteered for 35 years on one board or another, and hear that those of us in this community that happen to have made choices to go to school, get a job, whether we liked it or not, stay in that job, buy a house, or got a place to rent. We are the most charitable community that I know of. There isn't a week goes by that people aren't making donations. We just had a front page article where this community filled the freezer at St. Vincent de Paul. We have food for people. We have more opportunities and more people working and sacrificing, Betty Chin, to help the poor and feed those people on the street. You may have a right to say what you want to say in the United States, but we do have a thing called civility. And anybody who cusses out the mayor of a city is disgusting to me. There are no people that should be referred to as human dung. We all are compassionate as a country. And I believe in the Pope, by the way. But I just can't stand the lack of civility, and I know that it keeps a lot of folks away from these meetings. And I will hope that you will adhere to some of the rules about clapping and so on and so forth. And thank you for your time. I'll be back a little later.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the council at this time under public comment?
Hello. Just wanted to speak briefly regarding True North and that organizing network that's affiliated with HAF. As a participant of many community meetings through True North, I can speak to the fact that from what I have gleaned, there is no political agenda, and what it is to me is an opportunity for those that are most marginalized in our community to learn how to research and educate themselves on issues that affect them, to give words to what it is that is bothering them, and creating the conditions that make them feel uncomfortable and safe and marginalized in the first place. So regarding any sort of political affiliation, political party, candidates, etc., local or larger government, there is none, and I just want to make sure that our community is made aware and that they take the time to get to know True North and participate in the many meetings that are throughout our community, and take an opportunity to get to know the people that are organizing through there and creating educational opportunities and opportunities for our community to learn about our civic duty and our responsibility as a community. So I'm a supporter of True North, and I believe they bring a lot of positive influence and work and effort towards our community. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
hadn't planned on saying anything, but this lady, after listening to her, I wanted to interject something too. I also am an active member of True North, and the Eureka group of True North is actually called the Congregations, Eureka Congregations. We represent different churches. We have ministers and pastors. We all attend different churches. And the way we began our group in Eureka was to identify what we saw as the most painful situation that we saw that we wanted to make a change in. And what we came up with for the area of Eureka was homelessness. And we are, at this point, we are in what we call a research phase. We've talked with assembly members, we've talked with supervisors, we've talked with some of the city council members, we've talked with local leaders, community leaders, and what our whole objective is come up with solutions and try to find ways of alleviating what we see as a painful and unacceptable situation that we see. And I agree with the lady that just spoke. It's not a political agenda, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience and what we do here in Eureka. And I just felt I needed to say that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else like to address the council at this time under public comment?
Hello, Councilman. I've been really disgusted with your performance as a councilman, and I'm sorry to say that. I've been a member and living in the city of Eureka, and it pains me to have to explain to my children every day why they can't go somewhere. They can't go to a park, or our dilapidation of our parks. It saddens me every day. And when I physically saw the pictures of Devil's Playground, it made my heart sink of how much people were affected out there. And it just reminded me when I was in college and how the South Sand Spit. And when I was a child, the South Spit was beautiful. And when I went to college, it was horrific. And now I just see that whole area the same, South Spit again. And it seems like the city of Eureka is becoming a South Spit all over. And I am just saddened. I can't express that more than anything. I think that you guys need to address this as being accountable as any other citizen, that you have to take personal responsibility. That's all I have to say about that. If I was out camping illegally, I'd be ticketed. If I littered, I'd be fined. This can't continue in our community. The rainy season is coming up. The defecation that's out there is going to go into our bay. It's going to affect not only our community, but our bay, our oysters. Everything that our community is based out of, it's going to affect every aspect. And that's what we need to look at, is it's just compounding on top of each other. And not only is this one area that we need to concentrate on, we need to concentrate on every park. We have to make our public visible. And to help these people, yes, I see that we do need to help people, but they also need to help themselves. Some people don't want to be helped. They want to be there because they don't want people to see what they're doing. That's it. I understand why they're there. I understand why people want to have help. The thing that got me today is I saw a homeless person when I was at the mission today with my child. He is 7 years old. And the homeless guy came up to the mission person at the counter and said, "Thank you very much for your help. I am not homeless anymore. Thank you for your help." And I thanked him because I saw that it's possible that you can have help.
Thank you.
But I want to say one more thing. The homeless person said to my child.
Thank you very much for your
My homeless person said to my child that
Thank you.
stay with your mother.
Is there anyone else that'd like to address the council at this time? All right, we'll close public comment period then and move to consent calendar. All matters that are listed under this category considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted in one motion and pursuant to City Council Resolution 2011-22. If a member of the public would like an item on the consent calendar pulled to discuss separately, that request shall be made to a council member prior to the meeting, and unless a specific request is made by a council member, the consent calendar will not be read and there will be no separate discussion of these items. Is there any item on the consent calendar the council would like to have pulled? Okay. Marion?
I was under the impression that 5 has been taken off.
5?
Am I wrong about that?
No, 15 was removed.
15 was taken
Item 15, that's not on consent.
Okay. No, I know it wasn't, but I thought I got an email where number 5 was put. Maybe I missed the one after the number. Just wanted to check.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the all of the consent calendar.
I move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion of the items? Okay, go ahead and vote.
Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
Okay, then, at this time, we're going to take up item 14, which is the open space property maintenance plan. And Mr. Manager, you have a report for us first.
Yes, Your Honor. So, as you indicated, this is the Eureka Open Space Property Maintenance Plan. The City of Eureka has developed this maintenance policy that addresses the protection of public resources on city-owned property along the waterfront. Majority of this property is open space within the coastal zone, as well as the Eureka Waterfront Trail, boardwalk, and park property. By incorporating current ordinance provisions and proposed ordinance revisions in one document, Eureka City Council can provide policy direction to city departments on environmental cleanup, camping enforcement, protection of vital community resources within this area. There are three, I felt, questions that I wanted to address also as part of this. First one being, why is this policy necessary? Second, why now? And third, how does this relate to the city's established policy on homelessness? So first on why this policy is necessary. The Eureka Waterfront Trail, planning for that started in 2005, and when completed, that'll be a 6.3-mile contiguous trail for recreation and non-motorized transportation. In 2012, the Hickshari Trail portion of that was completed from Pound Road to Truesdale with $1.7 million of grant funds to construct that 1.5 miles. We've secured another $5 million in grant funds for the additional work on the trail, and that construction will begin this next year, 2016. The waterfront area is home to sensitive environmental habitat, marshes, vegetation, wildlife, all that are important community-wide resources. We also believe this is an area that should provide enjoyment for everyone, residents and visitors. There are challenges to this. There are both the short and long-term encampments within the open space do provide a challenge. As of last week, our police department was in there and counted about 100 tents, structures, with about 140 people camping within this area. And that's without any water or sanitation services. There's been an accumulation of shopping carts, trash, sewage, hazardous waste in this area. We really want to make it clear, though, that from the city standpoint, we are not looking to create a sanctioned camp as part of within the Eureka waterfront open space area, and that we've proposed a policy of incremental enforcement that really gets at this, quite frankly, a little bit at a time. So we haven't proposed running water or sewer, going through CEQA, doing coastal development permit. We just don't believe this is an appropriate place for long-term camping to take place. So why now? Since July, we've been doing weekly cleanups in the open space, except for a 2-week period where we concentrated efforts in some other areas. There's environmental damage from lack of sanitation, cutting and burning of native vegetation, and just significant damages that require remediation. The policy of incremental enforcement allows for timing of short and long-term housing options, and those can be anything from the rescue mission to MAC to other permanent housing. Did just receive a report today from Captain Watson from the police department really updating what's happened with the MAC since it reopened on July 1st. We've had a total of 86 people who've been temporarily housed at the MAC, and to date now 24 individuals have moved on to permanent housing out of those who came in. So MAC is doing what it was supposed to do. It's, as we said from the beginning, it's not the overall solution. It's a piece of the solution when it comes to housing. And by the MAC 3.0, as the county dubbed it, kind of the third version of MAC that deals with more individuals rather than families. It's really doing what was intended to do. During the past 10 months, EPD through the POP and MIST officers have had 258 unduplicated contacts with homeless individuals in the city of Eureka. Each individual was educated concerning the camping laws and resources and services available to them, and help connecting those people with services was offered to all that were contacted. I'll provide that report to the council as well that goes into some additional detail. The waterfront open space, I think, is not an appropriate area for camping. And also with the planned waterfront trail construction beginning next spring, the why now I think becomes increasingly important. So how does this relate to the city's homeless policy? The council approved the strategy that was proposed by Focus Strategies back in 2014. I've summarized that as part of this document. About really the first 2/3 of that page really get to the part that comes from the Focus Strategies report from last year. And certainly Focus Strategies makes the point very strongly that you really can't enforce your way out of homelessness, that just increasing police sweeps or creating a tent city, that those approaches don't solve the underlying problem of a safe place to live. So that's why we entered into an agreement with Humboldt County to contract with Focus Strategies for an implementation plan. We anticipate that plan would be completed by now. We're currently working with the county. We are meeting with them with Humboldt County representatives on October 29th to go over each of our staff comments from the city and county that will then be forwarded on to Focus Strategies before the report is completed. So I know I sent something out earlier to council indicating that we now think this will be on hopefully the first meeting in December agenda with that Focus Strategies implementation report. What I also added, though, in the homeless policy was a paragraph that really gets back more to a position from city administrative and legal staff that recognizes that housing is the solution for ending homelessness. However, management of the criminal issues, garbage, sanitation in parks and public space, and the liability for maintaining a nuisance need to be continually addressed to meet the needs of the community. And I do make the point that solving homelessness is not the responsibility of the city of Eureka. The federal government doesn't make it the responsibility for the city. The state government doesn't make it the responsibility of the city, and our municipal code does not make it the city's responsibility. I believe this is primarily a state and federal issue to solve, and I believe we need to continue to have more interaction with both our state representatives and our federal representatives to come up with better solutions to housing for homeless, and we've had some of those conversations in the past couple months. From the city's standpoint, we do not have a dedicated funding source or staffing to create or implement a rapid rehousing program. We have a responsibility to collaborate with Humboldt County, Department of Health and Human Services, along with our local nonprofit agencies to work toward housing solutions. But to that end, we have recommended the adoption of this open space property maintenance plan that provides for corrective action for the protection of these environmentally sensitive open space along the Humboldt Bay waterfront. We recognize that implementation of rapid rehousing is a longer-term solution to ending homelessness, but that allowing unfettered illegal camping along the waterfront is detrimental to the community's safety, leads to continued environmental degradation, and negatively impacts our tourism economy. To that end, the implementation of the open space property maintenance plan should be accomplished in a manner that focuses our enforcement efforts on encampments that are utilizing building materials such as pallets, bricks, cement blocks, roofing materials, and other products that are incompatible with the city's camping ordinance. The overall goal is to gradually reduce the footprint of these illegal encampments throughout the city while working through the MIST team and other service providers to assist individuals in finding permanent housing. One thing different about this report than what had been provided to council back in September and that had been tabled was it also created a, in a sense, kind of an implementation plan on this. And this has been retitled the Eureka Open Space Maintenance Implementation Plan. And the goal of this plan is to provide for incremental enforcement of the illegal encampments within the city of Eureka open space. The effort is focused on reducing the size and number of encampments in both the short and long term. Incremental enforcement will allow Eureka Police Department and the Park and Recreation Department to focus on problem areas from a safety and environmental standpoint and of problem campers, specifically those with significant criminal histories and active warrants. This level of enforcement provides an appropriate timeline and means for homeless individuals and families to seek both temporary and permanent housing options. So we note that illegal camping will be strictly enforced behind the Bayshore Mall, and we've been doing that now for several weeks due to safety concerns from the dilapidated concrete structures in the area and the recent history of violence within that area. Camping to the north of this area and south of Del Norte Street will not be as aggressively enforced, but only as necessary. But again, we're not saying that we're sanctioning camping there. We're just saying where the focus is. The city will begin the process of removing wood pallets, building materials, and plumbing fixtures that have been constructed on city property. I did a little bit of language change from what had gone out in the agenda. Number 3 that dealt with large tarps would be amended to read as the city will remove large tarps attached to trees and building materials that create living space or visual screening. And then number 4, the city will continue to provide cleanups of the open space and will also remove invasive vegetation through cutting and approved chemical treatment. 5, the city will pursue the potential location of one or more portable toilets to be utilized by all public users. And I have had that conversation with the Harbor District about bringing the portable toilets back. 6, the city will propose a storage of personal property ordinance. I don't think we're necessarily saying that would be next month. I think there's things we can do in this plan and we can determine how soon that needs to come back before council. 7, the city will propose an ordinance to specifically address things such as the pallets and building materials, stoves, grills, and other materials on city property. The building code provides a means of enforcement on the construction of structures, but we do want to consider some additional ordinance language on the pallets and possibly the grills. Some of our issue with pallets is the number of businesses that provide free pallets. That can be, I'm sure, useful for some homeowners who have a use for a pallet, but to have those brought back in the open space, we don't believe that's an appropriate place for that. And then added a number 8, the maintenance plan will be communicated to individuals living in the open space area to the greatest extent possible through personal contact from the Eureka Police Department, by providing written notice that will be given in compliance with the city laws. So I think those were really the main points of this property maintenance plan. It goes into, it identifies the area that's covered under this. It goes into various detail on recreational uses, sanitation and dumping, and then provides the implementation plan and then ties it back to the city's homeless policy as well. And with that, open it up to any questions from council.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the city manager or staff at this time? Natalie, go ahead.
I have 4 for now. So I've gotten a number of comments about this in the last 24 hours via email and phone. So I'll just go through them. The questions that I have that are that were brought on by public request. So what kind of chemical treatment are we talking about with the removal of invasive vegetation?
I'd ask for our Park and Rec director to come up to address that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As far as the chemical treatment, with the Palco March enhancement plan, we had a coastal development permit that was established through that process. It's been in place for a very long time, and we'd probably have to go back and speak with. We have gone back and spoke to the Coastal Commission about it. It's still in place, and what we would use is the big problem that we have out there is Phragmites, as well as pampas grass. And so, through the coastal development permit process and working with nonprofits, imazapyr was what was chosen. It is breaks down in sunlight. We would do it at low tide. When it hits water, it dissipates and it breaks down. And the way that it breaks down, its metabolic breakdown, is not toxic to aquatic species or to humans. There is an acute toxicity, so there would be the need to remove people for 24 hours and then do the application, and then it would do its job, and then people could use the open space again.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that was new was this piece of the maintenance implementation plan, with the first number being that we would be strictly enforcing camping behind the Bayshore Mall, but not as strictly enforcing to the south and north of the Del Norte Street area. I'm sorry, to the north of the Bayshore Mall and south. It's a little confusing to me, actually.
South of Del Norte.
Right. So one of the questions I got was, how are we going to deal with the pushing people around? How are we going to deal with the impacts of displacing people to a different area? And will that result, how would we be prepared to handle the result of people in more visible areas?
We've already displaced those who are behind the Bayshore Mall. That has already occurred. That was a police action that they felt was necessary following those 3 acts of violence, I think, within 3-4 days of each other. They felt from a police monitoring standpoint that a smaller area was lend itself better to enforcement. I think there's also additional vegetation removal and cutting that will happen in that area that certainly, as the Park and Rec director noted as well. So I think part of your question was, what happens with that displacement? That's already happened, but we still have these, in a sense, kind of larger structures in many cases, and part of this plan is to try to bring this down to where we don't have the pallets and the other types of materials in there.
Okay, well, I'll get to my last 2 then. So I do appreciate the idea of a management plan as a way of bringing some of these needs to the forefront. And I guess my last 2 questions are a little bit linked. One is, what does this accomplish for us that is new? Since we would still have to consider new rules and policies that are proposed in addition to this plan, and it's partly stating what the existing rules and regulations are. So I guess I'm not exactly seeing what it accomplishes for our staff that is new. And I'm also wondering if this is, if we do move forward with this, would this result in the proposed rules and policies and the discussion around those being brought to the forefront in future meetings more quickly? I mean, is that one of the, is that the silver lining, I suppose?
Trying to think, there's there may be a couple questions in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first part was we do have ordinances now that we could be more consistently enforcing. Certainly since July 1st, our focus has been on the cleanup efforts. We started doing citations on the area where the police department moved those campers out from behind the Bayshore Mall. I know that has taken place, but prior to that, there'd been very little done in terms of citations for the camping back in there. It was more of just trying to to work around it and clean up what was there rather than eliminate it. So, but by going after these, we feel we have, through the building code, we can deal with the building materials that are out there. So in a sense, we don't need an ordinance just to deal with that. We do have something on the books that allows us to go in and do that. Whether or not we want to consider, council wants to consider an ordinance that makes it more difficult for businesses to provide free wood pallets, I think that's part of the discussion we want to have with you on this as to whether you think that's worthwhile. And we had a lot of discussion, obviously, back in September on the storage of personal property. We have made some changes to that, and if we feel that provides a better tool for dealing with property from encampments that maybe look like they've been abandoned, and we don't want to be in the position of throwing someone's personal property away, we'll consider how that's working over the next couple weeks before deciding whether or not that ordinance, if that's the most appropriate thing to bring back to council. Is there something else in there that I missed addressing?
I guess what I saw that was new was potentially these proposed rules and policies. If this is our adopted plan, then that would require us to address these issues more quickly, was my thinking. So I wanted to test if that was what the intention was.
Certainly the intention is to move quickly on removing these types of construction materials within the open space. I mean, very quickly, right?
Because they're impeding cleanups?
They impede cleanups. They've created this large footprint within the open space, and we've really kind of proposed this policy of incremental enforcement to start shrinking down the size and number of these encampments. I think one of the issues that was brought up, I think it's the last council meeting when this was asked, in a sense, to kind of bring this back, was does it make sense to create deadlines for having some of this to occur? And I think that's an important part of the discussion for council is, do we want to see a 25% reduction in the number of encampments by a date certain and another percentage by some other date certain? And I think that's probably a valuable discussion to have. We didn't put that in here, but I think that's kind of where that discussion could lead.
Would we consider revising this management plan as a living document, or is this a kind of yes and it's done? I mean,
this is this is a policy. It's not an ordinance. It's not a resolution. I noted a couple changes tonight from when it went out, and I think we responded to some of the concerns that came out of the Open Space Park and Recreation Commission. They had recommended renaming the policy as Management Plan for City-Owned Properties on Eureka Waterfront. We did choose to go with that name, but we did recognize, I think some of the input was that this is more a maintenance plan than a management plan. So we really went back through and noted that this is a maintenance plan. And so that's why we renamed it Eureka Open Space Property Maintenance Plan. The other thing that changed, from September, we had initially recommended that there should be some consideration given to future ordinances that dealt more with dogs in the open space, bicycles off trail, some of that. I think when we brought this back was let's focus on the structures. I think that's what we see as the most problematic back there.
Okay, well, I'm dying to say more, but I'll wait until after public comment, of course.
Is that all the questions you had, Natalie?
Yes.
Okay. Kim, go ahead.
Okay, so I too have just a few questions. The first one being, and you kind of mentioned it here, this business of appropriate timeline. Now, I know that last meeting, I presented an exit plan, and that was kind of deemed by staff as doomed to fail, was the exact words on that. So I'm wondering, what I guess perhaps it's going to be a discussion about what will be an appropriate timeline. I really feel that, again, if we don't have any goals, if we don't have any plans, we're not going to go anywhere. So is that
a different discussion that we're going to be having, or can that happen tonight?
I think that can definitely happen tonight, and I think I and staff are very open to putting some type of parameters on that. If you want to see X percent of reduction by X date, that can be a goal to work towards. I wouldn't want to just to say doomed to failure, but I think what we were trying to do was recognize, certainly some from both public input and council input back in September, is a recognition that there is a lack of affordable housing. There is a lack of permanent supportive housing for homeless population. But we are starting to see some level of success, whether it's one at a time, two at a time with the MAC, and by slowly shrinking this and not creating where we're trying to move 140 people out at once, that it gives that a little more time to work, and that seems like that has a better chance for success.
Okay. Well, the paper did say doomed to fail. That was the exact language, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Is that quoting me?
That was quoting the report that we got. Could have been you. Was it you? Mr. Sparks. Really. Secondly, I just wanted to just solidify that this whole business of the personal property ordinance is not going to be discussed tonight. It's not going to be discussed for a while. What would a while be?
Well, we don't have it on the agenda tonight. I think it'd be up to council, as you maybe work your way through this discussion tonight, to say whether or not you want us to bring this back the following meeting, or leave that up to staff when we think the appropriate time to bring that back to council is. But we certainly, it has been redrafted, and we can certainly get that out in front of you just informally without even putting on the agenda, and start, responding to any questions you have about it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that put off for a while. And then thirdly, you talked about a number 8 that I don't have on my page. Could you please reread that for me?
8 really gets at how the plan is communicated to those people who are camping in the open space, and that is the maintenance plan will be communicated to individuals living in the open space area to the greatest extent possible through personal contact from the Eureka Police Department, by providing written notice to be given in compliance with the city's laws. At one point I had in there a 10-day notice, but depending upon what we come up with, it may not necessarily be 10. We want to think through in terms of whether that's a 10-day or a 3-day on our property.
Okay, so when would that apply?
That would we would want to be doing that before we start removing pallets, removing structures, that type of thing. That there's proper notice given.
Okay, so here's my concern with that, and I guess I can put it in a question to a degree somehow, but this business of the toilets, I did speak with the Harbor District today, a commissioner, and one of the problems with that is the whole eviction process. The commissioner that I spoke with today felt like the reason that the toilet was tipped over was because, and probably the escalation of the violence that happened down there was because of the 10-day notice and the personal property ordinance. When I talked to him today, he said that that this could be a possibility, but not if there was going to be any eviction type situations happening. So that's kind of where that comes up. So that's kind of why I asked the question.
I don't think we view this as an eviction type process.
No, but when you've got the noticing, when we gave the 10-day notice without council approval last time, there was a lot of pushback from not only the public, but from people out there. Yeah?
I'd say there is pushback with the city enforcing the city's ordinance. So,
which ordinance?
The illegal camping ordinance.
Okay.
We're trying to make sure that we're moderating that without providing a sanctioned camp.
I understand.
And that's a fine line to walk.
Yeah, I understand that. I would just, if we're going to be doing incremental housing or incremental enforcement, the idea of having I've heard it from a lot of the public over the last however long, that they'd like to have toilets out there. And what I'm suggesting is that just from the commissioner that I talked to today, if we're handing out 10-day notices that are going to be freaking people out, for lack of better, that's a really educated word, but if that kind of thing is happening, maybe we just need a further discussion, because if that kind of thing is happening, they may not be willing to go forward with it, is all I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Okay. Thank you. All right, this time we're going to open it up for public comment, and I would reiterate again, please, no clapping or cheering, and address your comments to the council, and please, let's be civil. I'd like to get through this tonight in a civil manner. So if you'd like to comment on the agenda item, Pam is going to call your name if you put a notice in the box. If you didn't put one in the box after we've gone through all the names that are in the box, then you'll be able to come up and speak afterwards. So Pam, would you call the first three people, please?
If the first three people could queue up, is Kirk White, Kirk White. The second person is Marion King. The third person is Mark Langholtz. So.
My name is Kirk White. I'm the general manager of Bayshore Mall. I'm here tonight on behalf of the mall and the mall's owners, Rose Properties. Since 2012, we've had the pleasure of providing a prominent retail destination for the residents of Eureka, as well as a central community gathering place. We've also developed a mutually beneficial relationship with the city, and we're very grateful for your continued support. As the only enclosed regional mall in a 155-mile radius, Bayshore Mall is a prominent retail hub on the North Coast region, and we serve a large customer base. That prompted our investment in the property. Recent renovations include new flooring, new interior paint, the installation of a children's play area, 4 soft seating areas, mall-wide Wi-Fi, 6 flat-screen TVs, all new food court furniture, and interior and exterior landscaping. All of these improvements have significantly improved the quality of the shopping experience. Our investment has also helped to bring best-in-class national retail tenants, including TJ Maxx, the Sports Authority, Ulta, Staples, Party City, and Planet Fitness. These retailers create jobs and also provide incremental tax dollars for the city. We believe there is still more value to be created at Bayshore Mall, but we're concerned about the current state of the waterfront area behind the mall and that it's a burden to the future of the mall. Safety and security of our shoppers, retailers, and mall employees is our top priority. However, the prevalence of violence, illicit behavior, and the pollution associated with the homeless encampments continues to pose serious threats to our business, the local economy, the environment, and the overall quality of life in Eureka. We understand the sensitivities that are at hand here, and we fully support the city and Eureka Police Department's efforts and proposed plans to clean up and restore the safety of the area behind the mall. However, we firmly believe that there's more that can and should be done. The status quo is simply unsustainable. And yet, the adoption of an overall plan for the area will preserve the community well-being, eliminate unnecessary stress among the local businesses, city workers, residents, and visitors. We value our partnership with you and remain committed to working with the city and the Eureka Police Department to identify and enforce an acceptable solution to a highly preventable problem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Mark Langholtz. I am the manager of the Chevron Marine Terminal here in Eureka, and I'm also a 44-year and something resident, and I've worked here my entire life as well. Our facility is the only marine fuel terminal north of Sacramento and south of Portland. We supply premium and regular gasoline, as well as clear and dyed diesel to most of Humboldt County, a majority of stations from the Oregon border south of Garberville, and many local stations to the east as well. Our importance to the local economy can't be discounted. I'm here tonight to bring to your attention 2 gun-related incidents that have occurred near the terminal within the last 8 months. And I want to stress, this is unprecedented in the history of the terminal. The first involved an individual who threw an unidentified package over the fence on a Chevron property. He requested access, stating that he had just been shot at and was being chased. Even though access was denied, the individual scaled the perimeter fence, entered the property illegally, retrieved his package, and fled north down the railroad tracks. The most recent incident occurred last month. 2 Chevron contractors were returning to the facility from our dock. While they were walking, they had a rifle pointed at them from a gunman who was standing on the beach to the north of the terminal. The gunman never lowered the rifle and actually tracked them with it as they continued towards the facility. As this is a Homeland Security regulated facility, there are strict security and safety guidelines that we are obligated to follow. Both incidents were reported locally as well as to the state and federal levels. The Eureka Police Force has been very vigilant and supportive in the safety of our local facility and team, and we're grateful for their presence. The safety and security of our employees, contractors, business partners, facilities, environment, and the community are vital to Chevron. And we are willing to partner with the city to arrive at solutions to the safety and security issue. We ask that the city take a firm and immediate stance on the safety and security issue that now surrounds our terminal. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
Well, just before she speaks, if the next 3 people can queue up, will be Don Smullen, Jean Scheffler, and Leona Simpson.
I'm Marian Cathedral King of Chevron. I'm with the Policy, Government, and Public Affairs. And I just wanted to reiterate the position made by Mark. The 3 major issues that we have. Number 1 is the safety, and he's mentioned to you why. The second is the security of supply, and this is something that is really very, very major, I think, for the economy of the city, the county, and the region in general. As he said, we are the only terminal north of Sacramento and south of Portland. Other oil companies not carrying our brands pull out resources from us. So that's a major implication. I also want to reiterate the continued partnership and community support that we have. As a decades partner in Eureka, we remain committed not just to the city, not just to the police force, but to the nonprofits that we partner with. Even if our focus has always been in education and our partnership with Fuel Your Schools or in with the Humboldt State, this year alone, we have already had 2 discussions with a foundation and a lady that has been mentioned here earlier, and we remain committed to help that organization and her quest to help the homeless. And again, we are also committed to help the city and the staff in coming up with some solutions. So thank you.
Thank you. Don?
I'll never get used to that. So I'm Don Smullen. I'm a Eureka resident. I'm speaking personally in support of what I call a homeless-free buffer zone from the Bayshore Mall to the Chevron fuel tanks. I have very vivid memories from childhood of the 1959 Roseburg, Oregon explosion. It started with a fire in a dumpster, exploded a contractor's truck with dynamite in it, and then exploded a gas station. And when it was done, most of downtown Roseburg was gone, with many, many people dead. I've distributed pictures, which is amazing that there are pictures from 1959. We just cannot have fires and propane tank explosions near the fuel tanks. And we certainly cannot have bullets bouncing off the tanks. If those tanks ever explode, there will be no more mall and probably no more Chamber of Commerce where I work every day. That's all.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for your work. Saturday, October 3rd, I participated in an anti-crime rally held in front of the mall. As usual, the Times-Standard misreported the facts in the newspaper that a couple dozen Eurekans showed up at the rally to stand against crime in Eureka. There were 70 or more of us. There was an older lady standing next to me. Her large sign that she made was decorated in polka dots, and it read, "Enough is enough." That says it all. I believe that's how the majority of Eurekans feel. Nearly every car that drove by honked and waved in support. Many people told me if they'd known about the rally, they would have joined us. In regards to the open space property maintenance plan, yesterday, I was extremely disappointed to read that incremental enforcement of our laws is now being suggested instead of taking firm action immediately to shut down these camps. Some illegal campers may leave, but others will come. You're sending a mixed message. If illegal camping behind the mall can be strictly prohibited, why not everywhere in the city? I just cannot believe you would let this go on for another year. Where's EPA? Where's Child Protective Services? But I am glad to hear you're collaborating with the Board of Supervisors. I think that's very important and very fair. Last week, I went down to the encampments with a couple friends. We wanted to see where the chief had told the illegal campers to relocate. I also went to every park in Eureka, since I had been hearing that the parks had become unsafe. What I saw overall was sickening and disgusting. It was so much worse than I had imagined. And if citizens went down to the encampments or to some of the parks, especially around 8 or 9 a.m., they'd be shocked that this deplorable situation has been allowed to continue. There would be outrage. I could even see vigilantism happening. I saw tents, piles of trash, mattresses with springs hanging out, empty old food containers, broken electronics, bikes probably stolen. Worst of all, human feces on the ground with used Kleenex nearby, which I almost stepped in, all the way from Del Norte Pier to Sears. A woman I know who lives near the bridge told me she regularly sees the maintenance guys shoveling up human and dog poop into gallon containers. They have to deal with needles scattered all over. They could get stuck with those needles. The homeless advocates should be feeling sorry for the maintenance men and women. As for the parks, there's only 2 left that I would consider safe enough for my children, and those are Sequoia and Carson Park. Forget Highland, forget Cooper Gulch, Ross 2030 Park. Ross Park has drug houses all around it. That's a great environment for kids. In the cemetery above Cooper Gulch, more disgusting human trash can be seen in the woods. I don't want to say in public what's going on in Cooper Gulch in the woods side of the skate park. Why hasn't the city council told the police chief to fine these people for illegal camping and littering at the very least? Why aren't the homeless picking up their own garbage and putting it in the trash cans? What is holding you?
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Prior to the next speaker, if the next 3 in the queue will be George Clark, Mark Huntington, and Sue Brandenburg.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
First thing I want to say is we have a person here photographing the audience that is not a member of the press, and I find that very intimidating. I realize it's a public meeting, but I have privacy rights as well. And so that's, I don't know what you can do about that, but I would ask that you look into that matter, please. We started off this evening listening to your reports of your convention for the cities. Up came the word economic development. You talked about some justice serving legislation. We talked about a lot of issues. I'm a recruiter, have been for 35 years. I own Sequoia Personnel Service. Clearly, these issues are now hampering us from bringing in young professionals and young professional families. I've had 2 years ago a family from Idaho that were all high-end media general managers. They were, unfortunately, we put them up at the Red Lion. After their tweens were panhandled a couple of mornings, they called me and said, you know, this isn't for us. We're on our way out. This has happened more than once. It's also complicated by the airport situation, but that's another discussion. We talked about millions of dollars going into more trails, and isn't that wonderful, except none of us can use them. My husband survived lung cancer. When we got him 2 little pups, he'd go down to Hickshore Trail and he'd come home and say, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful." After about 3 times with unleashed dogs, being attacked verbally, he didn't go anymore. So if we're going to build trails and we're going to work about having open space, then we ought to have it so everybody feels that they're a part of the family. One of you said, "Well, where's the silver lining here?" And I felt like almost all those questions were, we don't want to get rid of these people. I mean, we can't do this. And I learned tonight in the last few meetings I've attended that what we have a really competent manager. First thing I learned being a board member is that if you hire staff, you should follow what staff advises. We have a divided council on this issue. It's clear to all of us. And yet the rest of us have to live with it. Us business owners, moms, grandparents, we have to live with the fact that everybody there can't come to some idea that it's not nice to have poop on our streets. It's not nice to be panhandled on every corner. Nobody likes it. And for the first time, I spoke to you about this last time, I was actually intimidated at the Bayshore Mall, bringing a vacuum part back to them, and I had somebody follow me into the building warehouse. I don't know, 64, I've never seen this, but what we do need is for this plan to be implemented, and we need a timeline, and it needs to be implemented soon. Dragging this on doesn't help. Out at the South Spit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
George Clark, I live in Eureka. Rushing a homeless policy without a housing plan is irresponsible. Eureka's rapid rehousing implementation plan remains incomplete. The focus strategy consultants hired by the City of Eureka strongly reject the continuation of costly sweeps, citations, and incarceration that further destabilizes Eureka's most traumatized and vulnerable residents. The Eureka homeless policy refers to permanent housing that does not exist. The word camping is inappropriate in describing desperate residents lacking alternatives. It chooses the words criminals, addicts, and mentally ill instead of men, women, and children. This is a degrading and shameful excuse of a public policy. It claims that businesses and tourism are threatened, yet the most common complaint I heard at my restaurant in Old Town concerning Eureka's visible failures to enforce violations of blighted buildings, lots, vacant storefronts, and the stench of sewage as tourists enter Eureka. These are the sights and the smells of unbridled greed, unregulated growth, divestment in affordable housing, and the speculative subdivisions that joined the national housing casino of 2008, causing an enduring economic collapse and a growing homeless crisis. Eureka's homeless policy wrongly claims that our reported homeless population exceeds national averages. In reality, it matches the national average of about 1% when you include the unincorporated communities on Eureka's borders. Humboldt County's reported homeless population is also about 1% of the total population. Humboldt County must immediately begin providing modest, independent apartments for that 1%. California's Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 17,000.1 through 17,030.1, requires California counties to take responsibility for the basic needs of their homeless residents. Eureka's homeless policy should emphasize Eureka's responsibility to compel Humboldt County to fulfill its housing obligations, while Eureka fulfills its obligations to provide adequate zone locations for homeless housing under Senate Bill 2, and by officially declaring that an obvious housing crisis exists under California Government Code Section 8692. Mr. Mayor, City Council, and staff, instead of irresponsibly inviting more lawsuits, Eureka can join communities across America, discovering the moral and cost-effective advantages of providing modest housing necessary for reintegrating homeless residents into the community. Thank you very much.
George? Yes. Just want to clarify something. Are you the George Clark that was quoted in Smithsonian Magazine?
I'd like to remind the city that we're trying to get cruise ships to come into Eureka. We need the tourist dollars. I just did some traveling. I was in Southern California, was also in Hawaii. And the islands that we visited were spotless. They were clean. Southern California is clean. But you come to Eureka and it's a mess. The properties aren't taken care of. You've let homeless camp anywhere that they have chosen to. I personally think you have too many people going and delivering food to people rather than making them responsible for themselves. If we do have tourists come in here, the first thing they're going to see is all those camps, all those tents along the shoreline. I don't understand why you're not enforcing the law as far as the bay is concerned. If you have people and human excrement in that bay, you are destroying our environment. This business that I saw on TV last night, that you expect to see 25 to 30% of the people put in a house within a year, the message I got was this is long term, this is going to go on. Well, how do you expect when the word gets out that all these other campers, the people that choose to be homeless, aren't going to come here and camp? How are you going to keep them out if you have said, oh, you can camp in this spot, but you can't camp in that spot? As a ratio to the rest of California, Eureka has more homeless than the other cities our size. And the reason they are is because there's so much nonprofit activity here. So my thought is that you find an inventory of how much low-cost housing you actually have in this area, because you have much more than what's being discussed. And the people that are unhappy, that don't think there's enough housing, they can go to the federal government, because there's anywhere from 13 to 15 million illegal immigrants in this country, and they're living somewhere. They're not out there in those camps. So in my mind, it's the federal government that you should approach, not the city of Eureka. The city of Eureka cannot be responsible for the federal government not enforcing its laws. And the city should enforce its own laws and what's on its books, and you should take care of the environment. Thank you.
So the next three persons that will be in the queue will be Thea Stewart, Aaron Taylor, and Jeannie Breslin.
I'm Mark Huntington. I'm a local contractor and a longtime environmental activist who would like to see green spaces cleaned up. And I've read the Eureka homeless policy, and for me it's a three-pronged policy. Number one, eviction first. Number two, criminalize all aspects of homelessness. And number three, bury your head in the sand and hope that homeless people miraculously disappear. There's absolutely nothing in the policy to deal with the people that are being evicted. Evicting people at the onset of winter will not solve the problems related to homelessness. We need a viable alternative, a safe, legal place for those people to go before we evict them. We have local nonprofits and the homeless people themselves who are ready to implement short-term solutions until permanent housing is found. But there are obstacles in the way. The state of Hawaii declared a state of emergency for homelessness very recently, freeing up millions of dollars in funding and removing obstacles to short-term fixes for homeless people. In Utah, a red state, maybe the reddest of states, chronic homelessness has been reduced by 91% because there's a political will to do something about it. That the numbers, the raw numbers, are from 1,932 chronic homeless people to 178 now. In Utah, they did a study and they found that housing plus the social work to keep people in their housing averages $11,000 annually per person. Jail plus hospital visits for those same people is $17,000 per year. It's not a question of feasibility, it's a question of political will. permanent supportive housing programs around the country have been very successful. New York City, which has a much larger problem than we have and has a much higher homeless population, in New York City there's 56,672 homeless people at any given time. Out of that, 2,988 are chronically homeless. In Seattle, the number 4 city for homelessness in the country, there's no measurable chronic homelessness. According to HUD, the annual cost of permanent supportive housing is $8,067.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thea?
Well, it happened to have been last month, I believe it was September 18th, there was a state coastal commission that was up at Humboldt State. I attended. There was quite a discussion about the state law, my dears. It happens to be a state law. People are not allowed to camp or live in tents along by the water. We're talking the Pacific Ocean, the bay. That's included. Well, I think it was easily a month ago, it was stated that you were going to be clearing out the green belt. It happened last Wednesday. A friend of mine, we were going to go walk the hill figure behind the mall or behind the steakhouse restaurant, and Rex Bowen was there with tons, good Lord, tons of kids. They're having children's run. Rex told me, he said, Thea, 20 minutes from now, you're going to have to get off the path. So my friend and I said, well, let's just walk behind the Bayshore Mall along the Greenbelt. So we did, and people were nice. I had no problem. But goodness, there was litter galore. And regarding the litter, I have talked to you before, it really concerns me how much trash is along by the bay, considering we get such a breeze, wind. How much of that trash gets in the water that is not healthy? It doesn't look good, for heaven's sakes. And regarding that, the city of Arcata just last week put an ordinance in, which I think was quite a brilliant idea, of not allowing restaurants to give styrofoam. Say you've had a meal, you have leftovers. They will not allow, once again, restaurants to give take-home in styrofoam. I guess it's cardboard. I really would suggest the city of Eureka consider following Arcata. I mean, I've mentioned to you, I'm not bad-mouthing Betty Chin. She means well, but when she gives the food out in styrofoam boxes with plastic forks, knives, and spoons, I saw her do that at the welfare office at 4:15 in the afternoon. The next day, I went back to the welfare office. I walked from there to the mission. I registered on my waist 1.3 miles. I did it in, I think it was 23 minutes. It doesn't make sense. People could easily walk to the mission for their dinners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thea.
Mayor, City Council, I get so tired of hearing what Eureka is supposed to do for everyone else. Isn't it time that we start asking what we can do for Eureka instead of expecting everything to come from someone else? There is a thing about personal responsibility. I do believe in compassion and helping, but there's also something about enabling. And I am outraged that every time we come here, we talk about homeless. It is not homeless. They are illegal campers, and many of them are criminals. We are asking you to represent us, to keep us safe, and not just a small portion of our population, so to speak. We're asking you to allow our children to be in parks safely. I'm asking you as a woman to be safe in any of our public lands. There's just not safety. Without safety, we have nothing. Furthermore, I would say to you that this is not just a Eureka problem. This is a county problem. This county, in its infinite wisdom, concentrated all our services here. It is not for the city of Eureka to shoulder the entire burden, and I agree with that. And I encourage you to go to the city and to go to the state and to get support. It is not just a Eureka problem. Enough is enough. Please represent us. Please, we're begging you. Represent us. Keep our city safe and clean. Give us hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prior to the next speaker, the next three persons in the queue will be Linda Lewis, Kathy Anderson, and Bob Bartley.
Okay, so they're there, and we're still criminalizing them even though we're not giving them citations. We're still calling them criminals because they're trying to live. A lot of them, I work hand in hand with them, and they're working on trying to get out of there. Even with the services fairs, I'm with the services fairs every month. And so many times they have to say, no, I can't help you. You don't fit the category. No, there is no house for you. No, there is no nothing. And let me tell you, if you really go and talk to the MAC, most of those people that have been put into permanent housing are just put in another transitional system. So that's just fooling because they don't even know where to put them at this point. They're not even working with real estate or our rentals or anything. So at this point, we were supposed to have focus strategies. Okay, so I don't mind the maintenance, but treat these people like human beings. Give them a dumpster like everybody has been asking for. There was an accumulated area, and that's part of the pictures that everybody saw. And all of a sudden, the city stopped cleaning it. Well, if you don't go into any neighborhood and not pick up their trash, it's going to look like that. So give them the dumpster, put some porta potties, because even if you want to say this is not a sanctioned camp, who are you fooling? Who are you fooling? Because you are. You have legally given these people this place to stay at this point. So treat them like human beings so that we can get on going. And you know what? If it's the county who didn't get their paperwork in on time for focus strategies, county owes us. Because this is ridiculous. We have worked hard, and we have wasted a lot of money and a lot of time on this. I'm tired of coming up here and asking and saying the same dang thing. I want a better coastline. I want to have my kids on the other side of that gate. I do. But not when it is going to hurt somebody else. And I do have to admire the change of some of the language that is going on, and that people are representing that these are human beings and not just a criminal or not just a transient. But we got to do a little bit more. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Linda, and along with some of the others that have been up here, we have gone down at least once a week, sometimes more, and actually spoken to the people that are camped behind the mall. They are not all criminals. They are not all drug addicts. You have people legitimately there that have lost their jobs, lost their homes because of that. And we still haven't heard from Focus Strategy as to the amount of housing that is available. And yes, there has been some effort with the MAC, but it's so small to the need that is there. I would challenge some of the people that have been up here that are homeowners, like those of us that have been up here also, to go down there. We're there, it used to be Wednesdays, we are now there every Friday, and once a month there is a service fair. We are there every Friday, providing food, asking how we can help, what the needs are. And I would challenge some of the other people that have been up here to say they're tired of this, to come down and talk to the people that live there. Many of them are no different than us. The police have done a great job in coming down and trying to serve the warrants and get the criminal people that are there out of there so that there aren't that many problems. But to move these people or tell them they must go without homes to put them in, we're simply moving the problem to another community, another neighborhood. And we'll be back up here with people complaining they don't want them in their neighborhood. I am not saying, and I agree very much, that having them in the back of the mall and having that area is not a solution. It isn't a permanent answer. But they have been there, and to move them until we have a solution seems counterproductive, and we're just creating another problem in another neighborhood. We do need to get the garbage cleaned up, and part of that is they're no longer picking it up like they were. We need to get a dumpster back there. And people are trying. If you go down there and talk to them, they are trying to get home. They're trying to get jobs. It's hard to hear people that haven't spoken with these people come up here and say they're bad, they're criminals. They need to go talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next, Pam?
Bob Bartley or Kathy Anderson?
I just wanted to reiterate what I said before, is since True North has a connection with the larger True North, and they have a lot of money, over $1 billion in assets, and 200 and some million, 113 million a year in income, that they plead with that organization that they're associated with to come up with a funding plan to support our homeless people. They could pay for it. They have the money. The city of Eureka does not. Also, I'd like to say a little bit about the topic here is that the Board of Supervisors needs to be approached to mitigate some of the problems created by the illegal campers in Eureka. We're here because services are centered here for people from all over Humboldt County. Since this is a county problem as well as a city problem, it's only fair that the county step up and help with the money for the relocation of campers and provision of services in outlying areas. I recommend that the City Council send a strongly worded letter to the Board of Supervisors to this effect. This is a now problem, not I'll get around to it later problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Kathy Anderson, the next three people are Rita Bardill, Nezzie Wade, and Jeff Reagan.
I'm Kathy Anderson, and in 1992 I was handed this file by an attorney at the Legal Services here in Eureka, who left after the county and the city of Eureka decided that they weren't going to do anything for homeless people, that they were going to criminalize them. One of the papers inside of this file is from the Tulane Law Review, and it's called Towns Without Pity. When an official deprives an individual of property pursuant to an established policy, it is the government's burden to provide the owner with an opportunity to challenge the threatened deprivation before an impartial decision maker. In articulating due process standards, the United States Supreme Court has emphasized that the possessions of ordinary citizens are deserving of considerable constitutional protection. For individuals without great wealth, the continued possession of a stove or a bed may be essential to provide a minimally decent environment for survival, humans in their day-to-day lives of survival. For the homeless, potential implications of property sweeps are extraordinarily grave. Property sweeps may deprive homeless individuals of everything they own, save the clothes on their backs, threatening their already precarious existence. Given the stakes involved for the homeless, due process protections have singular importance for homeless individuals threatened with property sweeps. Official efforts to relegate the homeless to a kind of second-class citizenship where their property and liberty are subject to official deprivation virtually at whim cannot be tolerated. In light of the long history of unconstitutional actions taken against displaced poor and the relative powerlessness of homeless individuals, the courts must be ever vigilant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Yeager and Council. My name is Jeff Reagan. You might recognize that name as I sit on the Planning Commission of the City of Eureka. My wife and I live in Henderson Center, and we've lived here since 1997. You probably know that I'm a realtor, but you might not know that before I was a realtor, I worked as a pastor, and I was the staff member primarily in charge of dealing with homeless folks. My wife and I, we giggle sometimes because we try to remember all the homeless people that we've actually hosted in our home, and we never can get the list straight. We kind of forget people every time we go through. But in that work, it's been a privilege and an honor to help a lot of folks move out of homelessness and kind of get their lives back together. Many times it's just folks that are down on their luck and need some support so that they can kind of regroup and replan. Sometimes there are substance abuse issues and other personal issues that people have to resolve, and sometimes there's mental illness. But the one thing that I've discovered, a couple things, but the main thing that helps homeless folks to not be homeless, to get healthy and to lead active, productive lives is connections with the community, connections with family, maybe sometimes family out of the area, connections with neighbors and friends, connections with communities of faith communities and other purposes like that, and also mental health resources, resources for job training, education, all those kinds of things. It's community, it's connection. One of the previous speakers talked about the need for folks to go down and talk to homeless folks, and that's what she means. It's connection. And the question I have for you is the current policy of allowing people to camp on the fringes of society in squalor and filth and trash, drug availability, all those kinds of things. Is that helping them to make those connections that are going to lead them out of poverty? My concern is it's not. That as we enable people to live homeless lives in isolation and seclusion, in conditions that are not helpful at all, access to drugs, subject to criminal behavior, we're just not helping them. So the first step, all of us, I think, in this room have experienced a time when we didn't want to do something, and it took someone kind of poking us and prodding us. The city of Eureka is a generous city. There are groups, individuals all over the city that are waiting to help homeless folks. But if the homeless stay in the shadows, on the fringes, we can't help. The first step in helping the homeless people is to give them a gentle, firm, kind, loving nudge to get them back into relationship with the rest of us in the community so that they can get the resources that they need. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
After Nezzy Wade, the next three speakers will be Leo Sears, Shayna, and Kim Brown.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. I couldn't come after a better person in terms of the comment that was made about being in community. I really had some things to say, but I think what I'd like to say first of all is thank you, because I want to speak from my experience of just having, I'm on the board for AHA, Affordable Homeless Housing Alternatives. We just had a tiny house expo. We built a tiny house or two to be in the expo, and we did it in community. And being in community while
Please
we built
address your comments to the council.
I'm sorry. Being in community while doing this gave us an opportunity to be there for people who wanted to come and participate. People who came were homeless people. They helped build this house. They helped do all the different kinds of things, from gathering materials to doing cleanup to painting and everything else. While we were doing this, just for a very few days, altogether maybe 18 days in the whole time frame, someone who was homeless got a job. is still employed and is getting really good pay. Two other people were able to participate and become active in helping us build that had skills to do that were also homeless. Those connections get made when you do things in community. And I agree, there's not much in this plan other than further criminalizing the population. You know, laws that make it a crime for homeless people to sleep in public places, even when there isn't room for them other places, is unconstitutional. And we have in this plan a whole lot of existing rules. I would really like to recommend that we honor sleep activity as what it is, which is a basic biological need. We can't go without it. And we don't have a safe place for people to be. We do have options. We could provide them. And there are people like organizations that will help make that happen and provide safe sleeping accommodations. There are other things in terms of providing safe camping or for safe sleeping. We could do that on a permitted basis or find those places and do this. And we should be impelled to do this primarily because of what Mr. Clark said about being bound by the Welfare and Institutions Code, but we're also bound by ADA disability definitions, which, if you've heard of people as mental illness, drug addiction, those are covered under ADA, and we should be impelled to think about the ways in which we're opening ourselves up to lawsuits and liability when we don't address those. And the ordinance that or further ordinances that are in here remind me, it sounds a lot like war. You put more ordinance and more ordinance and more ordinance, and it just seems like it's way more than what we need. We need to be humane.
Thank you. Who's next?
Leo Sayers, Eureka resident. Lived in Humboldt County most all of my 81 years, except for the first 4. I've seen a lot of change, and I'm not happy with what we have now, what the change has brought us. To date, the council's prevailing attitude has been that you want an overall solution to the homeless problem. We all do. And until one is in place, you won't support anything your staff brings forth to help them cope with the associated problems. It's called kicking the can down the road. It's a great disservice to the people who elected you to set policies that enable your staff to move forward in serving the needs of the city. I call upon you to be realistic. First of all, your staff needs your cooperation in helping them with the day-to-day performance of their duties. They can't provide an overall solution, just as the city can't provide an overall solution. The lowest level of government responsible for providing overall solution to housing is the county and their HHS. Your actions to date has citizens hollering for you to do something, but the city doesn't and shouldn't have an HHS department. What you need is to be pushing the county, the state, and the feds. Work with your staff now, today. Give them the tools they need. I implore you to be realistic. Please quit kicking the can down the road. You've got a great staff. Listen to them. Help them give this city what we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
Mary Yeager. And by the way, for the council that don't know, if it sounds like I'm yelling at you, it's because I am completely deaf in one side of one ear and partially deaf in the other ear. That's why I have a service dog with me. So, you know, I'm not intentionally yelling at you guys. Trust me, you will know when I'm yelling. I'm married to a retired Navy chief. But also took 2 bullets in the line of duty when he was on the New York State Police, so you trust me, you'll know when I'm yelling. Hopefully I never have to get to that point. As far as homelessness, okay, I'm in one of those situations. I would rather not be living at the budget motel. I get tired of waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and having to shake the blankets with cockroaches crawling all over me. Okay? When my husband died, what should I tell my husband? He can't be moved. It would kill him. Should I tell him to hurry up and die in the nursing home he's in? I am one of those people that falls in the cracks. I just recently had, and I am upset with EPD right now, because I've had to make 2 calls, one for pit bulls. Both of my legs are now in cast, one in a boot cast like last time from a pit bull running loose on the property, and one from just a couple of weeks ago. And this is where I have this is where animal control asked me about my service dog's paperwork. Refused to cite the guy for not having, the guy blatantly admitted to having his dog off leash. Animal control refused to cite him. Yesterday, I had one of the criminal element of the homeless, and that's we have a criminal element of the homeless, and we have the non-criminal element of the homeless. I had one put there, I'm calling 911, an assault in progress. It took 30, 40 minutes for an officer to show up. If it hadn't been for the manager at the budget, thank God, the one good thing about it is he saw it and he came running across the street, and this happened right in front of the Chevron, and it was because I had witnessed a domestic violence situation, and I stepped in to protect us. In this case, it was a male that was the victim of the domestic violence, and he's developmentally disabled, and I stepped in to protect him from somebody twice his size. And the lady that was battering him grabbed me by the throat and threw me to the ground. So if you think all homeless are criminals, you're wrong. I'd love to work, okay?
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. After our next speaker, the next 3 speakers are Jan Turner, Roger Pryor, and Sylvia DeRoy.
My name's Kim Brown, and I've been a citizen of Eureka for 46 years. When I was a child, I grew up right up the street. We walked downtown, went to the malls, grew up by Ross Park, played, never had any worries. I'm staying at my mom's house currently. She's had a stroke. I have to take care of her. I have to keep padlocks on her 6-foot fence to keep people from trying to come in the back door. This is not the city I grew up in, and my dad was big into city politics, and he would be totally ashamed if he was here right now. That we have problems. We have a crime and drug problem, and we have a homeless problem. And I give a lot of time back to charity, and I'm all for helping people who want help. But that Devil's Playground is horrendous. Have any of you been back there to see what's going on? Have you tried to go to the mall at night? Have you tried to go to Applebee's? Have you seen all the businesses that have been broken into? I've watched your eyes roll a number of times when people are speaking, and I just don't think you get it. We need to clean it up. Our time frame is now. We have rules and policies for a reason, and they need to be implicated. When you raise your kids, you give them rules, you expect them to abide by them, and there are consequences, and we need to implement those consequences and take action. And sorry, this is my town. I grew up with the timber industry, fishing industry, a wonderful old town, and it's gone. And there are 8 public restrooms down in Old Town that people can use. People don't have respect, and they're not taking care of things, and we need to implicate a whack-a-mole. We need to get them out of here. Sorry.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'm Jan Turner. I
am really happy to hear that 24 people have been gotten into housing, but I'd like to remind the council that there was 750 homeless people in Eureka interviewed by the point-in-time count. So that's probably an undercounting of the number of homeless people that are in Eureka. This isn't a problem that can go away very quickly, and it's not going to go away without quite a lot of effort, including production of more affordable housing. That is not a quick fix, and it's not necessarily somebody else's responsibility. I take particular issue with the line in the staff report that says solving homeless is not a responsibility of the city of Eureka, and that the city doesn't have a dedicated source of funding for this purpose, neither does anybody else. It's just as much the city of Eureka's problem as it is any other jurisdiction. And jurisdictions all over this country and want to believe that the homeless could just go somewhere else or that they came from somewhere else, and that's not the truth. It becomes the city's problem when the city attempts to criminalize people who don't have another option. And if they don't have somewhere else to go, if they can't get housing, they don't have the resources, whatever the reason, you're just, to tell them to leave or do something else and say that's a consequence for their bad behavior, that doesn't even make sense. People have to have a place to go. Somebody mentioned that the South Spit moved to Devil's Playground. Well, that's not entirely true, but it's partially true because the issue was never dealt with, and people just get moved from place to place. And it is true that I saw somebody at the Devil's Playground that was on the South Spit. She's, so I wanted to, the one thing I do see that's really positive in this policy is the potential putting toilets out there. I think that's a great idea. And just wanted to mention, as far as the pallets go, that in one campsite that I saw that was very neat, they were using pallets to protect their leash dogs. So they had created a little fence around their campsite so that their leash dog would not be attacked by unleashed dogs using the trail or in this camping area.
Thanks, Jan.
Roger Pryor. I sent you guys an email. I don't know if you got it or not, but this is a copy of the proposals that I wanted to suggest. I fully agree with the idea of creating a really sound long-term plan. I think it is a long-term plan, and I don't think this is what's been proposed. It's kind of a plan, but it's not really a plan that has takes everything into account and also has a timeline. I think a timeline is really important. So I think this is only these are temporary proposals, realize this is a temporary situation, but it is a situation where you are sanctioning camping in a certain area. However temporary it is, it's happening there. So I've been working with the residents out there to try to clean the place up. And a couple of things that would make a huge difference would be a weekly dumpster out there that the people out there and the people that are helping clean up could put garbage in the dumpster directly, rather than having a place to put it on the ground, and then the city sometimes comes and picks it up and sometimes doesn't come and pick it up, and then it gets spread out, and that doesn't seem very economically viable. It'd be much simpler, much less expensive to put a dumpster out there for a day, let us put the garbage in it, and then take it away. I've been asking for that. I think it would really make a big difference. The garbage that was out there in that huge pile, I know because I've been intimately involved with this for every Wednesday, is not the garbage of what's the campers out there are generating. That was brought in from outside because there's a break in the fence. I understand is a mall fence. It's not. I asked Greg if he could fix it. He said it's a mall properties fence. Anyway, there's a break in the fence. People are driving in and dumping garbage, not from the Bay Area, but from the city. So that needs to get fixed. In the meantime, the city could tomorrow put a concrete barrier, a little picture of it there, not expensive. Drive out there with truck, hoist, put it on the ground, and block the access to the area so that people couldn't go in there and dump stuff from other places. The other thing, something very simple, very concrete that could be done. Pallets under the tents. I think you ought to allow pallets under the tents. Winter's coming. It's flat ground. The ground doesn't soak water in, and so a tent on the ground is going to get wet and cold. So pallets on the underneath. The other thing, final thing, is the portable toilets. I think it's really, really essential. And I think you ought to have 4 to 6 of them, not just one. You got 140 people out there. One is not going to do it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sylvia DeRoy, and what I want to say is, when a person is treated as though they're worthless, a negative entity, as someone who does not deserve caring and aid, what are the likely results of that treatment? The person can, in some instances, start seeing themselves as worthless and less than deserving. Chances are they'll start viewing those who view them in a negative light with anger and resentment as the enemy. People who make other people feel worthless are, in fact, the enemy of that person. When a person feels attacked by another's perception of them, is filled with anger and resentment, that person is not going to care about the welfare of their enemy, is not going to care if they dump garbage on the enemy's lawn. They will probably ultimately get a feeling of satisfaction out of dumping on the enemy's lawn, and an ugly cycle of negativity creating more negativity is created. How do we break that cycle? Homeless people are the alienated citizens among us. They have no sense of entitlement. They have nothing or next to nothing. Tell me, why should they care about what they dump and where they dump it? They're fighting a battle for survival with a scanty arsenal. To treat them like cattle and herd them here and there is no answer. To start reaching out to them as one caring human to another is the only viable and decent answer. The money it will cost to make the area, say behind the mall, a tourist attraction, if that's even possible, would house a huge number of people. Why isn't that a first priority? It would take a relatively small amount of money to supply toilets and showers, garbage receptacles, and a sheltered area with cooking facilities. Hire John Shelter to administer things and create a small crew to do routine cleanup, and attitudes would change very quickly. Telling people who are living in unheated tents that they can't build a roof over their tent to protect them from the rain is simply cruel. If these simple acts of decency were implemented along with clear efforts to house people over the next year or so, you would be giving hope to many hopeless people. If you want people to care, they must feel cared for. I'm not saying that what I've suggested will be a problem-free panacea, but it would be a positive move in the direction of a solution that will have been achieved in a decent, humane, and caring manner. Anything less should be unacceptable. Homeless people are people who are hurting. Is another trail or tourist attraction more important? Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
That's all the signed
Is
speakers.
there anyone else that would like to address the council that didn't sign up? Go ahead.
My name is Sandra Warshaw, and the reason I wanted to speak today is that there was a period, I wrote the first article on homelessness in the Journal back in 1991. And the reason I wrote it was because I was so thrilled to see this moment of glory, of just, it was just such a special moment when the community came together. And, you know, if you had a chance, it was kind of quoted, Bill Hansel, what happened is that homelessness just began to be apparent. And people thought, well, we can fix it if we just try, right? So, but what happened is everybody in the community got together and said, we can fix this. There was a banker on the Humboldt County Task Force. There was, representatives from the faith community sector. I know 3 minutes is going fast. But the reason that I bring it up today is that I'm not a member of AHA, but I believe that AHA is offering you this another moment of triumph, in the sense, that's not the right word, but I didn't sleep because I was so anxious about what I was going to say. So, but which is probably why I'm not getting as upset about those people attacking me as I normally would, because they don't have the energy. But the thing I wanted to say is, okay, if you got a chance to go to the AHA thing, I have the pictures. And here's the thing: I'm not an expert, but I have talked to the people who have been outside, and I have pictures here of a woman who had a brain injury, and she's sleeping under the awning on the boardwalk. Another picture of her. Here she is across from St. Vinny's. I made it small so people can't quite identify her. Here's a woman who's like in her 50s, was suffering from domestic violence, and so she was an author. I checked it. She had her book at Amazon, and she ended up sleeping, under an awning on the sidewalk. And so that's the choice we have. Here's AHA. Here's people getting together, like, I think pictures tell the story. Here they are building the thing. They did it in 1 week. 1 week they built that structure. These are some of the pictures. So what I'm saying is, if people are listening, and apparently sometimes they do, let's as a community say, no, I'm serious. I think the people who attack me are as needed as much as the people who are the progressives. Because my joke is, if I was on a ship and it went over, I'd rather be with the conservative people. I think they just grab me and put me back on the boat. And my progressive friends would do a study or something. So I think, and you know what I'm talking about. So, but the point is, I think just as we did in the 90s, we need to believe again. We need to take a chance. We asked the homeless to take a chance. We asked them to change their lives. Well, we have to change our routine. We're addicted to sweeping, So let's take a chance. And I think AHA can do it. I'm not a member, but I witnessed what they did in a week.
Okay, next person, please.
Hello. Sorry, it's hard to follow. Resolving homelessness is not the responsibility of the city of Eureka. Solving homelessness is not the responsibility of the city of Eureka. That's correct. It's my responsibility. It's your responsibility. It's their responsibilities. It's the county's. It's Fortuna, where I'm from. It's their responsibility. So it's all of our responsibility. Thank you. I was looking for that quote, cannot enforce our way out of homelessness. So now, instead, you're going to incrementally enforce your way out of homelessness. Designating this as a limited enforcement area is no solution. The city has created a de facto tent city where everybody is illegal. I would like the Eureka City Council to remember that at one point, Chief Mills was saying he just needed a place to tell the people where to go. Please remember, only one thing is true of all the people living in the Pelco Marsh and the other green belts of Eureka and Humboldt County. They are criminals under the no camping laws. The homeless policy before you states that the overall goal is to gradually reduce the footprint of illegal encampments. The goal is worthy, but this plan, as part of the means to do that, is of great concern. It doesn't actually do it in a way that's very acceptable. I don't know how to say that nice. The city's no camping law applies everywhere except in designated areas. Please consider using the state statute to declare a shelter crisis, as they have in Hawaii, as they have in Los Angeles, or trying to in Los Angeles, to declare a shelter crisis and designate one or more areas. The declaration would reduce your liability related to this use of city-owned or leased properties during the crisis. It also allows you to set minimal health and safety standards, so some of those makeshift, if they're safe, things, people could help themselves through makeshift shelters. I have spoken with Mr. James Baskin, a former coastal commissioner. I learned that he contacted city staff with an offer to provide information about emergency provisions in the city's own coastal plan that could be used to establish an emergency camping facility on a temporary basis in areas outside of Pelco Marsh, but in the coastal zone. The offer was essentially rebuffed. Any camp in the Pelco Marsh is a problem. Housing first is a long-term problem. Please do not pass.
Thank you. That's all. Time's up. All right. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilwomen. Good evening. I won't be long in the tooth. I know it's been a long night, and I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody that spoke, and I appreciate all of you for what you do. But I feel like we need to find a win-win. I hear your city. I don't live in this city, but I live with a bunch of criminals down in Southern Humboldt. We have criminals everywhere, and I hear your city say that they want a win-win, and we need to work together for that. I hear you talk about camping. That's something, City Manager, that you and I do. We save up for vacation. They are not camping. They are living. They are living. We are not camping out there. And so we really have to find a solution. And I don't know what that is, but I don't think that ordinances, if we want to be the toughest little city, we're headed that way, because we have people in jail for sleeping here. You can't sit here. You can't lie here. And now you want to steal. And this ordinance really is to steal private property and not violate due process, is what I feel. Private property is our private property, their private property, like it's your private property. Their private property might be a tarp, yours might be a Jaguar, but nobody's coming to steal yours, and we shouldn't steal theirs either. And that's what that ordinance feels like to me. So we need to go back to the drawing board and find a place where people can live that are poor. And if I remember correctly, I've been around here for decades. The poor will always be here. They always have been here. And if we listen to our last chief that was here longer almost than I've been on the earth, the last thing he said was, they just want to camp. And that is it, period. That people will need a place to camp. And he got that after you all forced him to enforce it for many, many years. It didn't work. And so what I really challenge you to do is, let's see what works for everybody, all the citizens of Eureka, everybody, not just, and labeling people criminals because they don't have homes is not fair. These are the most vulnerable people in our community. I know you think they're something else, but they're human beings, and they have to use the restroom, and they have to sleep. And I, as a woman, and as a mother and a wife and all those things, want to feel safe walking down the street just like anybody else. I've been a victim of a crime, but it was a doctor that had a license that violated me. So they're criminals in all elements. There's bad apples in all elements. So tonight I ask that you don't look at this ordinance. Don't put any more ordinances on it.
Thank you. Time's up. Next person.
Mr. Mayor, Madam City Council members, my name is Matthew Owen. I'm a member of or live in Eureka. I'm only a third-generation Eurekan, so I'm relatively a newcomer. I'd like to bring up a few items here. Though you're entitled to your own opinions, you're not entitled to your own facts. While one woman likes to yell out very loudly every meeting, there's no affordable housing in Eureka, I called the director of the Eureka Housing Authority today. We currently have 800 units, which are HUD Section 8 low-income housing in Eureka, 800. So next time someone says there's no low-income housing, we'll correct them. Moving on, someone else said there's not a problem of homeless in Hawaii. They must not have read the newspaper where the governor of Hawaii declared a state of emergency over homeless yesterday, Hawaii. Eureka Police Chief Mills, in his blog he writes, said 72% of our violent criminals are transients, not from Eureka. I have a simple proposal. Transit them to jail or to the next county. Also, I'd like to say, as everyone keeps saying that we have a giant environmental problem down at the Palco Marsh, where's our local environmental community? Where are the baykeepers? Where's the NEC, the North Coast Environmental Center, and why are they not doing anything down there? For folks complaining there's not enough homeless housing here, I have a simple solution. Why don't you build some more? Try to go through the process of dealing with the city, the Coastal Commission, getting permits, and go build your own housing. Everyone will be much happier with you versus you complaining every week. For the city, though you may not like the homeless, possession's 9/10 of the law, and guess where they're at? They're here in our city. While you don't want to sanction homeless camp, I think you have an unsanctioned camp there right now. In real estate, there's a term called prescriptive easement, which simply states if I stay at a place long enough, it basically becomes mine. The homeless man last month stated he's been down the Palco Marsh for 3 years. I hate to tell you, but you're opening yourself up to a large lawsuit by allowing this to continue. And finally, I hope we can come up with more solutions, whether incremental or even bigger solutions, such as AHA's camps. Every little bit we help get people out of there helps up in the long run. I think if we all work together, we can start to make progress in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a break at this time and then re-adjourn in a minute, about 10 minutes. Okay, we'll call this meeting back to order. And I'll, at this point, I'll close public comment, and we'll return the issue to back to the council for your comments or actions. Linda, go ahead.
I'll start with comments. I have lots of problems with the us versus them mentality of almost everybody who came up and spoke tonight. We are all in this together, and I realize that some of us are on the side of the establishment and the law, and others of us are on the side of like just getting by, but that if we don't figure out a way for everyone to win in the situation, we're never going to get out of this situation. Now, the city of Eureka is not in charge of housing, nor do we have money for housing. I encourage everyone to go to the Board of Supervisors and discuss this with them and ask them what their plans are for housing, because the state monies that come through the DHSS is for housing, and it should be coming down to the local level to put people in permanent housing. And the answers, what there are there in the state of California. Now, we can do things here in Eureka, passing a plan to keep from further degrading our marsh is not at all a bad idea. But I really think that we need to designate an area where people can legally camp, but also find that nonprofit. Apparently there's a number of them out there in the world who is willing to run that, manage it, and operate it so that it isn't the city of Eureka, because you really don't want government doing that. There's so many rules and regulations that come along with government doing anything that it almost makes it impossible for it to happen. But if we can find property where someone else could run it and operate it, management, then we could maybe have that happen. Then there'd be some place for people to go. Because right now, there is no place for people to go. And everything we do, whether we're trying to, protect our environment, which I think is really important here, and I think that's what this plan is about, we're just moving people around. The first 10-day notice that went out in the marsh, my neighborhood was inundated with folks. And it's not your regular run-of-the-mill people who just don't have a house that run first. It's the really scary people who run first because they don't want the police to come and move them along or put them in jail. And those are the folks who came out first from that first 10-day notice, was the really hardcore people that are kind of scary. And when we do this tonight, I'm sure that the same thing is going to kind of happen again. And we need to have some sort of thought to the future in place in order to keep that from being just a continuing process. And if we can find a location to designate, and I don't think that's impossible in our city, then we can do that, and we can maybe make some headway in the just moving people around, moving the shells around. I'm going to be in favor of this plan because I think we really need to get all of the pollution that's happening to our bay and the degradation of our shoreline under control. And yeah, that's the job of the city of Eureka, is to make sure that our property that we have is good for our bay, for our seafood, for all of the people of Eureka, and the people, even the people living down there, are living down there in piles of garbage and human waste. And we need to, get a plan going so that we can move forward. But I really hope that, and I've been asking for this and asking for this and asking for this, that we ask our staff to find a location and communicate with some nonprofits about who might be willing to manage and operate a designated camping location, so that we can stop moving the shells around and start taking some of the people who want to be in community and want to become not homeless anymore into an area where they can be safe, and we will not be dealing with the unfettered garbage and human waste that we're dealing with now. So I'll support this, but I think every council comment period from now until the end of my term, if we don't start on the road to designating an area where people can camp, we're just defeating our own purpose.
Marion?
Well, I'm glad you're going to support it. That's great. So a couple of things. I don't know, it was 4 months ago, 5 months ago, a long time ago. The City Council, when we were voting to approve the Focus Strategies Rapid Rehousing Plan, at the same time, it sounded a little bit schizophrenic, but we also voted to let somebody, a 501c3, such as Nezzy Wade's AHA, become a 501c3, have a board of directors, decide to go ahead and secure some property, and build the houses, and run the place. We said, go for it. And nothing's happened until the end of last month, when Nezzy finally built a couple of houses. And so I don't know if she's a 501c3 at this point, but that whole idea that we said those are our terms for the tiny house villages, because Linda was very excited about tiny houses and came back from Oregon with a glowing report of how wonderful it was. So nothing's happened with that. Then, subsequently, which again, most of the people in this audience don't know, we had a meeting where we talked about the MAC. Well, at that MAC, there were certain people that came, and I won't name names. But anyway, during that meeting, Rob Homeland reported, our staff member in economic development, reported about that, the success of what was happening at the MAC, kind of just give his update and stuff. But then people started wanting to know about, could they build tiny houses, declare a state of emergency, where could they, is there any place to build it? And so Rob reported at that point, and I'm thinking he's going to stand behind it, hope the city manager knows this, that the proper place for a tiny house village is in a trailer park. So somebody in that audience said, oh, well, are there any places zoned for a trailer park? And Rob said, yes. Okay, so now we got a place, a trailer park, that could be run by AHA or somebody of that ilk. And they could run it, they could collect the money for it, they could supervise it, they could provide the food like they're doing currently down behind the mall, and we're all happy. And so it's a move forward. But people are acting like they don't know that there's a place that they can put the tiny houses. And that was at that meeting. And Rob Homeland said there was a place. So I'm hoping he's going to stand by that, but that's a fact. So I feel that this plan is a humane, incremental way to do this, while at the same time cutting down the horrific footprint of creating housing down there. So if these people truly want to camp, they can camp, and we're going to do things like we already are doing, which one of the speakers didn't seem to know, that we already have and have been putting dumpsters down there on a weekly basis, Wednesday to Thursday. Yes, there's only 2 weeks that we didn't do it because they were moving down to deal with things down at Cooper Gulch and other places that the city didn't put the dumpsters out. They kind of drew back because everybody was so panicked about us taking anything from anybody down there. So they didn't for a couple of weeks, but the plan is that Wednesday afternoon the dumpster goes there, Thursday they take it away. And so it's already in place, which people are not acknowledging. Also, on the subject of affordable housing, we had a meeting here not very long ago, probably was last month, where the Housing Authority said that they were planning to build a huge number of new, they're going to remove some of their existing fairly substandard housing and put up new housing over in that, what we call the projects over there on the other side of the Eureka Mall. So there's going to be huge numbers more. I forget how much it was, 70 more dwellings? Something like that. Do you remember?
They were looking to increase the footprint of the public housing by, there's a couple different percentages thrown out, but maybe about 30 housing units, and it could be phased in. But essentially, though, the entire projects would be taken down and
reconfigured.
Reconfigured and new
to more housing.
built.
Okay, so we got that. Then we've got the affordable housing for seniors, which I don't know if any of the people behind the mall are considered just seniors. But anyway, that's going to be built at the Lodge at Eureka, which is going to break ground real soon, like very soon. So there's going to be another, 49?
Yeah, I believe 49.
49 plus a caretaker, apartment thing that's a little bit nicer. That's current market value type housing for that person. So now we're going to have a whole bunch more senior housing. Okay, then Betty said that at one of the last meetings, she said that she's housed something like 24 families. That since this whole, everybody got so much worked up about all this. So she's housed 24, and she just bought another property that she's going to house another 16 families, plus some other people, probably singles. So she's doing that. Okay, I don't know what the count's adding up to, but it's adding up. And I just wish that people would acknowledge that we are doing a great deal. And then we got the MAC, in which the chief of police just wrote, and I don't know if all of you are on our newsletter, but we have a newsletter where the chief of police gave all the facts on the MAC. And then I guess we have just a different update just recently. But anyway, because that was only through July, August. I don't even think it was September. Maybe it was September. Anyway, we got some data from them. And so they're having successes. They've moved people out from behind the Bayshore Mall and in the, quote, Devil's Playground. And so I consider this implementation plan the nudge that Jeff Reagan was talking about. You're a good parent. You say, we're going to limit how much you can degrade this place. We're going to try to do something to help it get on the road. And so that's what I consider this plan to be. And I am a little concerned about them being able to protect their property. But at this point, we're only going to be taking out the stuff that's trying to make houses or building materials or huge tarps, things like that. So we're going to slim them down toward being campers. And if they still want to do that, then we're not going to be aggressively pushing them out. Meantime, the recent count is 140 people back there. So where 700 comes up all the time, I don't know where that comes from, but officers just went back there and they counted 100 tents and 140 people. So this is behind the Bayshore Mall area. Anyway, so I'm going to support this. I think we need to take a step, and this is the step, a beginning, and hopefully we'll see how that works, and hopefully AHA or somebody like that will actually go find a trailer park and start building tiny houses and start running it and staffing it and bringing the people over there. So that's my spiel.
Melinda, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was glad that Matthew stepped up and corrected some facts there, because people tend to throw out numbers and they heard this and they heard that and this count was this and that count was that. The facts are the facts. And I just wanted to, Marion mentioned the police chief talked a little bit about the MAC, and there's been some criticism here, I guess, on the part of the county and social services and what they are or are not doing. But in fact, the city is partnering with the county Department of Health and Human Services.
The MAC is a major project that we are working on. So is our MISS team, which is funded primarily by Measure Z money. But there have been a lot of successes there, and I just wanted to mention a few. And my data is at the end of August. And there's some real human stories out here, too. But by the end of August, and of course there's 2 more months after that, 92 people had completed eligibility screenings, 76 of those from Eureka. 51 intakes were completed, 49 entered the MAC. Let me pull out a few others here. 21 people had exited the MAC for a variety of reasons, some of which was using substances illegally in the MAC. But others also went to permanent supportive housing. 4 of them went to some other kind of TH housing, I'm not sure what, transitional housing. 2 went to subsidized housing, and 4 others were housed, including clean and sober housing. They had a woman that obtained 3 jobs woman obtained 3 jobs and is now working full-time. A gentleman moved into a clean and sober house and now also has a job. The male occupant has been able to cover his home-assisted work for his sister's clients. Several occupants have been rekindled with relationships with family members. And plus, I have a number of statistics here that show how many people come from other counties to Eureka for whatever reason, and a number of people that have benefited from the TAP program, or the Transportation Assistance Program, which is also run by the county and in some part by Betty Chin. And there's quite a number of those people that have been returned to their home communities in Oregon, Los Angeles, Sacramento, and other states even. So there are a lot of issues here to deal with, but I just want to reiterate that we are working with the county. There is a need for affordable housing, but we are having some successes with our strategies, and I think this policy will help us improve the situation down there and help us move towards even more successes. Quite frankly, I don't think it has enough teeth in it. And I would kind of resent the fact that we're using the politically correct term of illegal campers because they're trespassers. And that's what they are. They are trespassing on our property. And I look at this as, a first step of giving staff the tools to assist in maintaining that property. Now, I'm all for helping, like I just gave all these statistics, helping the people that want to be helped and that we can help. And I think, 140 people isn't a huge number. And among those, if we can find those that we can help and get into the housing that we have and available here, we can really make an impact down there. And my biggest concern about this, and I'm not sure how to address it, but how do we keep people from moving back in once we clear them out of there? I think that's something we have to keep thinking about. We can't build a wall or build a fence because it's just impossible. So really all we have is continued enforcement, continued patrolling back there, and an effort to maintain our property. So I think it could have a lot more teeth. I think there's some kind of wishy-washy wording in here, incremental enforcement and gradually moving towards things. I'd like to see things happen quicker, but I know I don't have the support for that up here. So I think this is a good start and will really help our staff try to improve the area down there. We certainly know that our citizens want to use our trails, they want to feel safe, and at the same time we want to help the people that we can help. So I am supporting this policy tonight.
I'd like to start by saying that I would absolutely support
an enforcement blitz if we had somewhere else for folks to go that our own police chief is asking for. There's been a lot of things talked about tonight that people are scared of, and I am also scared about the acts of violence, the severe crime. I'm worried about acts of vigilante justice that I hear people talking about all the time. People call me and email me to tell me I've got a shotgun and a shovel. I've heard it so many times, it's like I'm almost totally immune to how upsetting and shocking that really is. I'm concerned about the severity of the environmental degradation. I mean, my work is in environmental planning and restoration, so that is near and dear to my heart. It's what I've chosen to do with my life. Destabilizing people who are hanging on by a thread is another thing I'm afraid of. Having close relationships with some people who have been really mentally ill and lacked stability, who downright scared me when they lost that stability or the few stabilizing forces they had remaining in their lives. It's not a pleasant thing, and it can have really dire consequences. Some things I'm not scared of are, not being reelected, not continuing to get my $500 a month salary from the city of Eureka, which if I could afford to put that $12,000 a year back into city coffers, I gladly would. But actually, the $500 a month is, $6,000 a year. My bad. Math is late, is hard late at night. $6,000 a year, if I could put that back into the city coffers, and afford to, I would, but I can't. So those aren't motivating factors for me. I'm here to serve and to be courageous and to work towards something that we haven't tried before. So I, like Linda, would like to see there be a designated place for people to camp, because I think there are people who will never succeed in some of the programs that we have, and I think that's the reality. I'm interested in being really realistic about that, but I do think we need a partner. We need a community partner to step up and say we will take take on the challenge of permitting this, of making it go, of fundraising for it, and I'm willing to be there every step of the way as a partner to that entity and to reduce whatever barriers we have to make that a reality. What we're here, the item under consideration is this management plan, and the goal of it is really clear. It's to create policy for managing these specific areas, really the waterfront and not all open spaces in Eureka. It's very clear, and it goes through some things that we already know. I do appreciate the change to the language, taking out some things about blame or lumping everyone together as a bunch of criminals. I think we're much more direct now in what we're saying here. And a lot of this is saying what we already know and reiterating rules and regulations we already have. So I don't think that staff need this to do their jobs. I think it's a step towards item A2, which is about proposed rules and policies. I really see this as a way to state what we plan to do in the near future and make it easier for staff to do the basic maintenance they need to do to remove needles, to remove trash, to remove human waste, and for us to consider placement of porta potties. Now that I think makes perfect sense, and I think that wheelchair accessible porta potties are one of the possible solutions to the tipping them over issue. That's what we've done when I have ordered porta potties for any public event where there's going to be chaos, is get a wheelchair accessible one. They're huge, they have a wide base, and they're harder to tip over. So and they also accommodate everyone. My preference for this plan would be to bring it back with revisions to the proposed rules and policies portion that is specific. I would actually like to see it have more teeth as well. I would like it to be more clear, to talk about the progressive enforcement, have dates, have goals and measures for success. I would like it to account for the basic necessities of sleep, and for that to be part of the progressive enforcement. I haven't gotten a lot of sleep lately, and I can tell you that I am not operating with a full deck. So my heart goes out to people who can't sleep on a regular basis. that isn't to say that I stand for the conditions that are going on in Eureka with crime or in that part of the city. It's not acceptable to me. So anyway, I just wanted to also point out that really this is a 6-month thing because we have a trail going in next summer or next fall whenever we break ground. And everything's going to change with regard to, maybe things won't change with regard to our maintenance of our parks and trails, but everything will change for the people who are living there when there's construction going on there. So it's really, about 6 to 8 months that we're looking at for this to be active, and I would like to see our proposed rules and policies speak to that and talk about what we're going to do in a 6 to 8 month time frame, so everybody knows, and so we're really transparent with all of the advocates who are here tonight who've put a lot of time and effort into what they're doing to help people who don't have a lot of tools. I also, I hope Focus Strategies implementation plan is indeed rapid because of that timeline, the 6 to 8 month timeline, and that we get clear support from the county to enact that implementation plan when we get it in November. We absolutely need that support. So I would prefer to wait just one more meeting to make this more specific and clear and to make it 100% transparent what we're going to do about camping enforcement so that people know. And so we're not freaking everybody out, as Kim said. Because the last thing we need is a lot of people who are not doing well in their lives, who are angry at the city and angry at the residents of Eureka. That also scares me. So I think we're close. I think we're close to having this be a useful tool, but I'm also worried about the implementation plan stating that its goal is to provide for incremental enforcement of the legal encampments, without having that level of specificity. And I mean, like, when are we going to, what's the physical boundary where people cannot go? Maybe that's a better way of saying where they can go. I don't know. And other information that I think people need to be consistent with this, because I think we need consistency. The public is reacting really strongly to the fact that we don't have a level of consistency in what we're bringing up. And I think what it is a response from staff bringing us tools that other communities have used and saying, what do you think? But that's not obvious to the public. It's not obvious why we're doing this and why we're discussing so many different approaches instead of sticking with something consistent. So I would like to wait one more meeting to adopt this.
I hate to do this, but I would like to move that we approve the open space property maintenance plan. I don't hate to do it because I want to approve it, but I think that we're going to be going on here till after 10 o'clock if we keep talking about all of the different things that we might want to change in this. It is a plan, and therefore things can change, and the staff can put in specific timeline for different activities as time goes on and bring it back to us, but we can have this part of it adopted as a policy and then move forward with the changes as time goes on, because we're hoping that in 6 months that we will have our trails and stuff, but this issue isn't going to change a whole lot in a 6 month time period. I think that bringing in some timelines at a later date would be good, but we need to take our first step forward, and I think this is a good first step forward. So I would like to move that.
There's
I'll
second. All right, been moved and seconded. Any further comments? Yeah, Kim, go ahead.
Can I talk, please? Okay, so thank you very much. So I just there's a lot that I want to say that I'm not going to say in an effort to not be here till midnight. But one of the things that I do want to say, something that really I've found very frustrating about many of these meetings about homelessness and what we're doing and not doing, is this complete divisiveness, this complete us and them, this complete, the business owners are bad and then the homeless are criminally, somehow they're worthless.
no, we're all human beings, and the only way that this problem is ever going to move forward and be solved is if people can quit calling each other names and be willing to work together. That being said, it's been real. I think I've talked about this before, but it's been just very frustrating to me the way people treat each other in these meetings. It's just ridiculous. I wouldn't let my kids treat people that way. So I too support the implementation plan. However, I just want to say, however, this business about the appropriate timeline, I would like to see us discuss that. We need to have some kind of a timeline. If we're not going to have an exit plan, that's fine, but we need to know that in 6 months, we would like to see 15% people housed, or 5%, or whatever we feel like as a council is realistic, and then move on and continue that way. Because currently, an appropriate timeline, that could be 10 years from now. That could be tomorrow. When is that? So I would like to see us have more structure with that, and I'd like to see us discuss it tonight, because I'd like to pass this tonight, frankly. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was I have some concerns about number 8, the one that you read, Greg. My concerns primarily have to do with the toilets. I would like to see us somehow mitigate that where it's not going to be, where people aren't going to feel like they're getting evicted. Like there's some, and again, I think if we have a timeline in place, then people are going to know that this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do. Because after talking to one of the harbor commissioners today, he was telling me that in Arcata they've done toilets at one of the softball parks there, and they leave them open all night. And when they close the ball field, the homeless come over and they use the bathrooms. They've had no problems, and they've been there for a year or 2 years. The problem is when we start, I'll use the term again, freaking people out or scaring them, and when you don't know better, you don't do better. And so there's that reactionary thing, and that's the problem. And I believe that's why we had those stabbings, is that their behaviors escalate when they get afraid. I mean, that happens to me. So, I'm sure that I'm not the only one. And when that's happening, we're going to have more problems. So I would like to see us continue to discuss tonight a timeline, and that we are not going to revisit this personal property ordinance until sometime much further down the line. And then just an assurance on number 8, and I'd be ready to go.
Linda.
Does Councilmember Brigel have a suggested amendment to the motion on a timeline? Specific amendment to the motion on a timeline?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
What timeline? Where? What part?
Well, I know it's not clear, right?
No, I'm clear on this. I'm asking you.
Well, we're talking about moving people out, right? Isn't that what our biggest concern is here? We want to keep our property safe, and we want people out. Is that right? I mean, that's what we've talked about the whole time.
I guess I'll have a conversation, but that's not what this says.
Okay.
This says people are no longer allowed behind the Bayshore Mall by the drying sheds. Period. Done.
Okay. So, and we're talking about incremental enforcement. Somebody's calling me. Can you believe that? We're talking about incremental enforcement. So what does that look like? We're going to incrementally enforce what? Camping?
Maybe the city manager could answer that.
Could you? I'm on the Eureka Open Space Implementation Plan, first paragraph. What is it? The second, third line, somewhere in there?
Oh,
okay. Could you speak to that, please?
Well, the concept with incremental enforcement was the idea that we could not find, we're not going to be able to move 140 people out of there in 30 days, 60 days. But we've already, in a sense, kind of closed down part of the area where camping was going on. The idea then of starting to by enforcing the piece dealing with the structures, since using the building code, that starts bringing the footprint down, and continue to have the MIST team and police department out talking to people in that area and trying to get them into that next step of housing, whether it's to the MAC or some other rescue mission, Betty Chin. There's several other things that are in the works as well. So I think purposely try to avoid necessarily saying, it's going to be 20% by this date, but if the point is, I think that you want to try to get in a motion is that we reduce the number of encampments back there from 100 to 75 within 90 days. I mean, I think that could be a goal that we could work towards.
So, okay, so what I just heard you say was that this plan is to lower the environmental imprint by removing pallets and those kinds of things, and to move people into housing, so to move people out of the marsh. That's what I just heard you say. So the appropriate timeline is exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying, if what you just said, if we can get some kind of an idea about a goal. Are we gonna house 5 people by Christmas? Are we gonna house 70 people by next December? I mean, what kind of goals can we make? Because if we don't have any goal or direction, we're not going to make it happen. And currently we have one MIST team. We have one person out there. One MIST team. One. So I'm just saying that it's a lot of work for that person. So
I was going to say, I think you want that goal to be for an initial 90 days, then we'll come back and report, and then from that 90 days determine, in a sense, what the next 90-day goal is, because we're going to have a better idea if we're successful at that.
I could support that, yeah. I just want to have a goal in place.
I see this as just a beginning tool to begin working on the problem, and the staff will be coming back to us repeatedly to clarify it, to do additional enforcement or additional housing for people. But it's an ongoing operation that needs to be done, and this is a beginning to get it going. Natalie, you have a question?
I just forgot to mention one of my most important points earlier in my diatribe. So the addition of number 8, which to the open space implementation plan, which is related to removal of personal property that is not allowed in the designated open space area, was added prior to this meeting after, I assume, meetings with the council. And I guess my concern about this is that in the plan, in the maintenance plan, we're saying that that's going to be a proposed rule and policy, and we moved to push that to January at a past meeting. And yet many of the elements on the implementation plan are exactly what we said we didn't want yet, and we wanted to have more discussion around. So that is actually my biggest issue with the implementation plan. I appreciate the additions to the maintenance plan and the sort of softened language around, or more less judgmental language around who the people are, what their activities are, just keeping it simple. The implementation plan is where I'm going, gosh, this seems to directly disagree with the maintenance plan itself, in that we're saying, well, and I realize that the goal of this is to clean stuff up. So I know that. I just, if we have had so much feedback that the personal property ordinance is going to be an overwhelming barrier for people actually improving their lives and getting stable and maybe being able to stair-step into housing, then I'm worried that if we say, yeah, sure, move people's stuff with as much notice as we can feasibly give, whether it's 10 days, 2 days, 3 days, et cetera, this is not consistent for me. So that's my problem.
The main point was to provide notice before we started taking down structures that were built without any type of building standards on city property, but to make sure that we had a notice provision to people that to let them that we're coming in and we're going to be doing that. So that
Okay. I
That's
get
where
that.
we're trying to be consistent.
And I see that in some of the other points. I'm just worried about the lack of specificity about what we're going to be taking. Okay, so we're going to be taking tarps and building materials and pallets, and we're worried about grills for obvious reasons, starting fires, that burn out of control or that harm people, and other concerns related to grills. I guess I understand that, even though people need to be warm and to eat, but I don't. I think we're skirting the personal property ordinance that we need to talk about. That is going to be a difficult conversation again next time it comes back to us. But I don't. There's just are we going to take then? Are we going to take tents? Are we going to take bedding? Are we going to take clothes? That's where I'm missing information.
Linda.
So we can wordsmith this and pick it to death, and you probably will never get 100% agreement on wording here. I think you can address all your concerns later when it comes back to in the form of ordinances or policies. But I think the general idea here is very well laid out in a plan that staff can take and move forward. I think they're very aware of everybody's concerns. And Mayor, I call for the question. There's a motion on the table.
All right, we have motion and second. Go ahead and vote.
I know. I'm thinking. I don't know if I can vote yes without an appropriate timeline.
Abstain.
Can I abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain is no? Oh. All right, well, I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
3 yes votes. Councilmember Arroyo, no. Councilmember Burgell, abstain and no. Motion carries.
Okay, move to item 12, which is purchasing system for ordinance amendment. What? Sorry. Probably. Make a motion.
I'd make a motion. We extend the meeting for another, what do we got? 15 minutes?
I'll second that. Would you accept a friendly amendment?
Sure.
About half an hour.
Up to half an hour, yeah. Okay.
Your second?
I seconded.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Go ahead and vote.
Unanimous yes vote. Motion carries.
Okay, Brian.
Okay. So I'm filling in here on the purchasing system ordinance amendment for Finance Director Wendy Howard. The existing purchasing system was last received minor updates in 2005, and prior to that there were more substantial changes in 1986. A team of staff members recently met to go over where the perceived deficiencies were with the ordinance and where limitations were constraining the flexibility that staff has to effectively utilize the city's funds. Currently, staff is required to get 3 quotes for goods or services that are in excess of $1,500, with formal bids required over $15,000. The proposed ordinance raises these limits to $5,000 and $25,000 respectively. There's also new language allowing for alternate processes when purchasing used equipment, online sales, auctions, things like that. We found, especially in the case of heavy equipment and certain types of vehicles, that it can be very cost effective to purchase used rather than new and get much better bang for our buck. As is currently the case, all purchases must be covered by existing budget appropriations, and when additional funds are required, council approval will be sought. I will note that there's one change that needs to be made that was pointed out in the proposed section 39.43D. There's a reference there to $2,500 that should be $5,000, right? So with that, I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Questions? Okay. We'll open it for public comment. Is there anyone present that would like to comment on the agenda item? All right, seeing no one, we'll close public comment period and return it to council.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move waive reading, read by title only, and adopt bill number 898-CS, an ordinance of the City of Eureka, Title III, Administration, Chapter 39, City Policy, Purchasing System, amending sections 3942, 39.42, 39.43, 39.44, and 39.5.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, go ahead and vote.
Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
Okay, item 13, chronic nuisance ordinance.
Okay, on September 15th, Council introduced the chronic nuisance ordinance, which would provide additional tools to deal with problem properties throughout the city. Existing provisions in the Eureka Municipal Code seem to have a similar intent as the proposed ordinance, but they contain procedural difficulties that limit their usefulness. The proposed ordinance establishes objective criteria for identifying problem properties, based on both physical nuisances and criminal behavior using a point-based system. That's the unique thing here, is that our current provisions don't allow us to get at both angles of the problems that are sometimes present at a lot of these properties. The ordinance would allow for a voluntary process for owners to resolve issues, and then ultimately would provide the mechanism where we would have a clearly laid out case to bring before the court in order to facilitate compliance at the property. Now, I want to stress that staff does not intend to keep a running tally of points at properties throughout the city. I think there were some perceptions at the last council meeting that this would allow for aggressive targeting based solely on this point-based system. And to be honest, that's beyond our resources from a staff standpoint, beyond our resources from a financial standpoint, given the fact that these would be cases that have to be taken to court. So really this will be reserved for those cases that are the most problematic, the properties that have been continual problems for EPD, for our code enforcement staff, and give us a really clear mechanism to help define what the problems are and then have that clean package to take before the court for its consideration. So if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions on this for staff? Marion, go ahead.
Whoops. Just one, and it's just about that this ordinance is not intended to get to like weeds and all that kind of thing. This is about when criminal activity is compounded with. So we're still going to have the broken window, the deleterious effect on the community of having blighted properties. We still have that. This is where criminal activity is a part of the picture, right?
Exactly, where it's part of the problem. This allows all of those sorts of activities to be combined and kind of taken as one package to the court. But we still have our substandard building regulations, all of our other nuisance definitions, and enforcement mechanisms for those. But this is for those properties where, like you said, you've got the combination going on.
Yeah, Natalie, go ahead.
So this is the property owner who will be responsible for these points.
That's correct.
Okay, so not the tenants, for example, if it's a rental.
That's correct. I mean, the tenants would be responsible if they were the ones committing that criminal behavior. Then they could be prosecuted for that criminal behavior. But what we frequently see as our code enforcement staff works with EPD and the POP team is that you have situations where landlords aren't paying adequate attention to their properties, and they're, whether it's through overt action or just through inaction, they're allowing that criminal behavior to take place and continue despite repeated notifications that it's going on. And so, yes, after that sort of notification and a notice from the police chief and an opportunity to voluntarily comply, that's the point at which they could be held liable for the criminal activity at their properties.
Thanks.
So, Brian, what that does is gives you a quantifiable something, information to take to the courts. So it's not any he said, she said, anything. There's actually somebody has quantified how egregious this problem is and gives the court something solid, right?
That's true. That point-based system has, there are Class 1 violations that are worth 1 point, Class 2 that are worth 2 points, and Class 3 that are worth 3 points. And so you have to have some combination of those conditions or violations that add up to that 5-point threshold, and only then can you even declare a property a chronic nuisance, let alone take the case before the court for consideration.
Other questions for staff? Okay. We'll open the item for public comment. Is there anyone present that'd like to comment on the agenda item?
Thank you. My name is Jan Turner. I'm an attorney. I'm here on my own time this evening on this item, although I may not be in the future. I would like to see you repeal the law rather than amending it. I believe it's unconstitutional and deprives tenants of due process as well as their legal rights. It supports criminal behavior by discouraging people from calling the police. And if you look at these ordinances across the country, domestic violence victims have often been the actual victims of these types of ordinances because people are afraid to call the police. Landlords threaten to evict tenants if they call the police, and people have nearly died. There were people here present to talk about how one of them had had been in a medical crisis, and the landlord ordered the other tenants not to call 911 because of the belief that this would, presumably because of the belief that this would bring down a police call or something on the property. I have some problems with it in that there's no proof required that any crime has happened, and no forum for the tenant to question whether they actually did anything. All of this is required, no request is required, no proof. All that's required is an accusation. And normally criminal behavior requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, you're talking about depriving people of their homes without proof. And the way this ordinance has been used up to date is for the police to threaten the landlord and tell them to evict their tenants. And there's no forum in which that tenant can address the fact that they didn't even do anything wrong. The landlord, it's much cheaper for the landlord to just say, okay, I'll evict that tenant, than to risk thousands of dollars in fines, $1,000 a day, to fight this. Attorney's fees, loss of their property, use of their property. It's much easier. And the tenant can't raise this in court. There's nothing in here for the tenant to address the issues. It also deprives innocent tenants of their legal rights. A tenant is entitled to 60 days notice. If they've lived at a property for more than a year, they're entitled to 90 days if they have subsidized housing. And then they can go to court if they contest it. I have a lot more to say. May I have more time, possibly?
Not at this late date.
Okay. They normally have a right to go to court. This impacts the disabled and the poor and racial minorities much more than others because they're the ones that live in multifamily housing. This goes per property. If you've got a single family home, 5 police calls in a year might be quite a lot. In a multifamily building, it's not. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on the agenda item?
Not really something I want to do, but I do feel compelled. I did contact some domestic violence representatives last time, and they said they were very interested, but they said their focus has been on domestic violence awareness, and it's just taken up their time. I think what Jan said, I'm going to be honest, it's not from direct experience, but I did read it very, very carefully, up and down and backwards. And the thing for 2 points is simply that you somehow injure what is the wording? I have it over there, but it's simply that Yeah, fend the census. You know, if somebody, and I live with neighbors that just love to threaten each other with lawsuits. And my concern is if it is that you're going to pass it, then to have the police have an understanding of how it might be used and misused. Because what I was hearing from some of the representatives is there's a thing called mutual combatants with domestic violence, which means that if somebody, tries to defend themselves or attacks the person that, attacked them, then they become lawbreakers. And so it's such a gray area. And I would I know it looks good on paper, but I would just say if all these problems have happened in other areas, then I would ask that we look at that. Because what I'm seeing is something that Natalie said that was so perfect, that when we have actions, let's think about how it impacts the most vulnerable. And I agree with you, because there's only 3 minutes. I don't tell you how wonderful it is that you are more committed than any body I've ever seen to solving the homeless problem. So it's just I get crazy about my 3 minutes. But that is true. But also, the most vulnerable are the ones that get kicked out. I mean, that happened over at the Blue Heron. And so these are the people that you want to put inside. And it even said that Guy Anderson stayed there for, I don't know how many months it was, but during that period he didn't have any police reports. He didn't end up in the hospital. So, I mean, it's just thinking through who is this going to impact. And if you're going to pass it, which it sounds like you're going to, then I would ask that you really ensure that it's not misused, and that the police who go out understand the complicated issues of domestic violence. Because what I understand is often people don't, and they can find people or declare people criminals when they haven't acted in any criminal manner. So, thank you. And also, what I want to say, there was a shining moment back in 1990. So that was the word.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council on this item? Oh, then we'll close the public comment period. I'd just like to comment that the ordinance is not meant to go after people that you're talking about. This is for serious problems that we have in the city, and it codifies for the city what a private citizen can do anyway. Back in the mid-'90s, I organized a group of people in a couple areas of town, and we filed a civil lawsuit against property owners that were allowing drug houses to be operated in neighborhoods that impacted those neighborhoods tremendously. And we also sued a landowner that had a hotel downtown that was allowing heroin traffic to go in and out of there at will, and all kinds of illegal activity being occurred. And these were absent landlords that didn't care about their properties. All they cared about was taking their rents in. And the intent of this ordinance is to go after real problem properties that we don't have any other way of doing. So I think it's a good ordinance, and I think the council should seriously consider it. It's back to the council then for this.
Well, this is the second reading, so I think it's supposedly more a formality that we just have to do the second reading. So I make a motion that we waive reading, read by title only, and adopt bill number 885-CS, an ordinance of the City of Eureka repealing Eureka Municipal Code sections 130.10 through 130.11 and 132.01 through 132.02, and adding a new chapter 134 to title 13.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further comment? Yeah, Kim?
I am going to support this ordinance, but I do want us to be mindful of the unintended consequences that this could cause, and I hope that if that does end up being an issue, that we are willing to take a look at that.
Natalie, go ahead.
I have a question for Cindy. Given that, unfortunately, I wasn't here when this was discussed at great length in our code enforcement special study session, which I wasn't able to watch either. So is it possible to have an appeal process as part of this ordinance? For the perhaps for tenants, or well, it sounds like there's a voluntary abatement program, but that's really geared at the homeowner or owner of the property being able to create a plan to minimize their costs. But I'm hearing this concern that really speaks to me personally.
We can. I mean, we can add anything, modify it any way council pleases. We'll just have to take it back and rewrite it. But we can do that.
Is there have you seen that in other chronic nuisance ordinances?
You know, this was one that we put together. Gosh, we must have had, I don't know how many different examples from, I don't know, 10 probably. And we felt this worked the best for our jurisdiction. It follows, you notice with the point system, it follows the motel ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's consistent in that manner.
Sure. I am concerned about the issue with people being evicted instead of, calling the police. I mean, that does ring true. I have a very close family member who gets fined by her HOA every couple months, and she hides it from her husband because she doesn't want him to know that she's being fined for their altercations. So, I mean, that kind of struck me like right in the heart.
Marion, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just had just as a clarification kind of thing, example where someone called me and it was besides themselves because there was a house that somebody owned and then rented it to somebody, and then that somebody sublet it to other people and was putting people in that had all sorts of major drug problems, and there was repeated police calls to it, and it was more than just a pop kind of thing. You know, it was more like a chronic nuisance. It was chronically affecting the neighborhood. And so, I mean, we do have the POP team to do some of that kind of work where a chronic drug house, people, you know, the POP starts watching them and eventually they bust them and stuff. But there's other kind of things that are not quite as big as like that, but it's affecting the entire tenor of the neighborhood. And that gives, you know, that's where when the police have come multiple times and gunshots have been fired and, you know, or like this case where the landlord had no idea that his tenant had sublet everything out to other people. He didn't even know that. So, you know, so everybody's kind of involved in that. That's the kind of thing. So,
Any more comments? I could understand the concern for the tenants, but 90% of the time it's the tenants that are causing the problems, and the landlords are not doing anything about it, or the property owners are not doing anything about it. So this gives us another tool to deal with it. All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any more further discussion? Go ahead and vote.
Three yes votes. Councilmember Atkins and Arroyo dissenting. Motion carries.
All right, moves us to item 16, Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Grant Proposal.
Okay, filling in here.
I have to recuse myself, sorry.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead.
So, filling in again for Director Homeland. Development Services, Public Works, and Parks and Rec are working with our CAA on a grant opportunity to engage the public in a planning effort to improve the safety of and the experience for cyclists and pedestrians traveling north and south through the heart of the city. H&I streets are arterials in the city's street network, and they do an excellent job of moving vehicular traffic. Recent improvements coupled with education and enforcement have reduced speeds and increased safety. These arterials, however, are not very attractive routes for cyclists or pedestrians. The Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Sustainable Communities Program supports planning efforts that improve multimodal mobility, support a vibrant community, improve public safety, and foster livable and healthy communities. Staff believes that an effort to analyze north-south multimodal connectivity, focusing on H&I streets, but fanning out to E through J streets, is in keeping with the grant program. If successful in obtaining a $100,000 grant through this program, staff anticipates that the planning effort to analyze constraints and opportunities along these north-south routes would begin in fall 2016 and conclude in 2017. And this is kind of the next step in looking at how best to encourage pedestrian and bicycle traffic throughout the city. And there is a bike lane on J Street currently. It's safe for cyclists, but it's not what you see when you're driving through town, north and south. H&I are viewed as those corridors, and we're trying to figure out how to make them more attractive, like I said, more vibrant, and help out with property values along the streets, calm the traffic a little bit more, all those kinds of things. So we'll be looking at pedestrian bulb outs, which we're already submitting another grant application for through Caltrans. We'll be looking at the possibility for protected cycle tracks, all those kinds of things. And so it's an exciting opportunity for us to get some needed planning money and then see where to go from there.
I seem to remember at the HCOG meeting we changed it to encompass more than just H&I. Isn't that correct?
That's right. So that's the title of the project now. When the application goes in, I think is the Eureka North-South Multimodal Connectivity Project, something to that effect. And that's why I mentioned that it does focus on H&I streets, but we want to look at E through J partially to know what the potential traffic impacts would be, as you start to reduce capacity for vehicular traffic on those arterials. We want to make sure that you're not negatively impacting traffic on adjacent streets, and then also look to see how J Street factors into the conversation with the bike lane already present. How can we capitalize on existing situations and make everything work together?
Any questions for staff? Thank you. We'll open the item for public comment. Is there anyone present that'd like to comment on the agenda item? All right, seeing no one, we will close public comment and return it to council. Kim.
I just want to say I think this is very exciting. We've been working on H&I Street and on engineering for probably 7 years with the Transportation Safety Commission, trying to figure out ways to make those streets more safe and more attractive. So it's nice to see something's moving forward with it. Thanks.
Well, I like the idea of studying things and everything. However, I did notice, and it was an item that did get, I think, pulled, that wherever we had stoplights, that's where all the accidents are, and wherever we had bike lanes, that's where all the bike accidents were. So it's just kind of odd that J Street had no bike accidents, but Harris and Henderson and Wabash and all the and 6th and 7th, they all have bike accidents. So I just, I'm hoping that we're not going down a rabbit hole by putting bike lanes more places so that we can have more bike accidents, because that is an actual statistic that was part of the study. That's where they all are, all the little circles. So, but, if there can be something to improve the looks of H Street or to increase property values, I like that idea. I'm just not sure that bike lanes everywhere is going to be the answer for everything, because it obviously has caused more bike accidents.
Kim?
Well, I guess I'll speak to that. So there is truth to that. And primarily those accidents, well, it's true. They are, but they're like at 6th and 7th, H&I. Those are the kinds of intersections. Henderson, yeah. I don't know.
I have to say this. There's no cause and effect that we know of bike lanes and accidents. We have statistics of how many were where, but we don't really know what caused them. So studying what might work is a really good way of going forward. And I'll move that we receive the report and hope that we move on and get this grant to study this issue.
Second?
It's not an action. I realized when I read that.
Did you second it?
It's not an action item, but I do second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? What? It's not an action item. It's late. All right. Anything further, Mr. Manager?
We have no other reports, Your Honor.
And we are adjourned.